The moons of Qarth shimmered like polished opals, each one suspended in the velvet sky as though the city's famed jewel gardens had cast their treasure upward and left them hanging there by sorcery alone. From her balcony high in Zarozoan Daxos's manse, Daenerys Targaryen watched the silent glitter of distant constellations and felt an ache in her chest that no rich guest gift could soothe. Her dragons, Drogon fierce as a crimson sunset, regal green as summer vines, and Viserion pale as winter's breath, slept in the antechamber behind her, curled around one another in tangled coils of wing and scale. Their soft, whistling snores reminded her of the sea beyond the city walls, and for a moment she closed her eyes and imagined herself aboard the Balerion again. Salty wind in her hair, freedom ahead on every rolling wave. The perfume of night-blooming lilies drifted from the courtyard pools, but even that sweet balm could not erase the memory of Qarth's thin, blue-lipped smile or the promise that awaited her in the House of the Undying. Visions, prophecy, power, all dangled before her like the glass beads Qarthine traders strung to distract the poor. Yet her path felt narrower each day. The warlocks had stolen her children once, they might try again, or worse, if she walked their halls. But without allies she would wither in this jeweled cage, and her dream of wings shadowing the 7 kingdoms would die unborn. Behind her the dragon stirred, sensing her unease, and Drogon lifted his head, slit pupils widening to black pools in the gloom. A rasp of scale against marble, the metallic tang of ember-hot breath, and then his hiss, half query, half command. She crossed the threshold and laid a calming hand upon his neck. "Easy, my son," she whispered in the tongue of Valyria. "Sleep. I will keep you safe." But even as she spoke, she wondered if safety could exist for any child of hers, least of all in the city of splendor and masks. Ser Jorah entered without knocking, armored in boiled leather and Qarthine-forged steel. Dust from the desert road still clung to his boots, and sweat carved dark runnels down his temples. "Khaleesi," he said, softening the word with weariness. "The streets near the House of the Undying grow restless. I saw torchlight crowds gathering. Qarth speaks in the Plaza of Punishment, promising wonders at dawn." "What wonders?" She heard the cynical rasp in her own voice and knew it came from exhaustion as much as mistrust. "That the Mother of Dragons will walk the black corridors and emerge crowned by destiny." Jorah's frown cut new lines beside his mouth. "I fear what promise he made his crowd if you refuse." Daenerys touched Drogon's snout, his eyes closed again. "The Undying Ones dealt with me through illusion once. They will not find me so easily deceived. They traffic in worse than illusion." Jorah stepped nearer, lowering his voice as though the very stones might eavesdrop. "Skahazadan legends speak of hearts stolen to prolong their lives. And those who feed on shade cannot love the light that lives in you or in your dragons. Love?" A knife-sharp yearning stabbed her then, memory of Khal Drogo's laughing eyes, of Rhaego never born. She straightened. "If prophecy hides within those walls, I must claim it. A dragon does not crawl away from danger." Jorah bowed his head, beaten by duty. "Then let me escort you. Grey Worm and his Unsullied will march at our heels. If there is treachery, Ser Jorah, blooms like nightshade in every corner of the city." She tried to smile but felt the effort pull at the bones of her face. "I will go at dawn. You will come, but the Unsullied remain with the Khalasar and the ships. I will not leave my people exposed to thieves and sells words while I chase riddles." He would have argued, she knew, had argued before, but when Drogon lifted his head once more, lips peeled back over needle teeth, Ser Jorah swallowed his protest. Instead he pressed fist to chest and withdrew, leaving only the hush of coals settling in the brazier. Dawn spilled molten gold across the Temple of Memory, and Qarth awoke in shouts and chiming bells. The House of the Undying crouched at the far end of the plaza like a slab of night left behind by the retreating dark, its black stone facade absorbing light, drinking color. No door marked its entrance, no window offered purchase to the sun. A single narrow arch yawned like a throat. Crowds thronged the plaza, robed merchants beside barefoot beggars, perfumed nobles beneath silken parasols, pale daughters drifting on litters borne by silent slaves. All sought spectacle. All sought omen. Qarth stood upon a dais of lapis, arms spread as a tatterdemalion banner. His skin a corpse's blue beneath the unkind dawn. "Behold the storm born," he cried, voice high and thin. "Breaker of chains, mother of dragons, guest of the Undying." A hush fell as Daenerys approached, flanked by Ser Jorah and Kovaro, her Arak-wielding jogo braids gleaming bronze in the sun. She wore her Dothraki riding leathers beneath a mantle of Qarthine lace, silver rings on wrists and throat, and at her shoulders perched Rhaegal and Viserion, wings half spread. Drogon she carried cradled across both arms. Heavier now, yet she would not cage him again. "Our home welcomes you, Mother of Dragons," Piet Pri sang, bowing so low his forehead brushed his knuckles. "Enter and claim the truths that dwell within shadow." She paused upon the threshold. A tang of resin and wormwood wafted from the arch. The interior beyond lay darker than any midnight. For heartbeat upon heartbeat she felt the plaza hold its breath. Then she stepped inside. The gloom swallowed her and the air grew cold as cryptstone. "Yora," she called, but her voice came back thin, muffled. Footfalls echoed behind her, a single set, not two. She spun, dragons hissing, and saw the shadow emerging, Piet Pri alone, not Ser Yora. "You trusted one night's love when you should have feared 10,000 warlocks' hunger," he whispered, words dripping with satisfaction. Thin arms rose, his sleeve fell back to reveal a wrist crossbow of Valyrian steel strings. The dart it snapped free gleamed wet with dark ichor. Pain flared in her side, hot as forge iron. Drogon shrieked, wings thrashing. She staggered, clutched the shaft protruding beneath her ribs. "Monster," she gasped. A title too kind. Piet Pri lifted a hand, blue fire danced across his nails. "We are famine walking. In your fire we tasted ourselves reborn, and in your death we shall drink eternity." "Blood of the dragon? We drink you now." Rhaegal launched at his face, but the warlock whispered a word and became 3, then 5, then a ring of identical blue-lipped clones. Blades flashed. A dragon screamed. Bronze-green scales pattered to the floor like shed leaves. Viserion flailed, wings clipped by thrown steel, crashing into blackness. Drogon writhed from Daenerys' arms, black wings buffeting her with hurricane force. But even his fury could not tear through illusions that closed like a net. Pain burned up her spine, across her lungs. She tasted copper and salt. Her knees struck stone. Drogon's roars filled her skull, echoing like war horns across a battlefield that was her dying mind. From the shadows vast doors slammed open and the undying ones glided forth. Cadaverous figures with lips the color of bruises, eyes milky as spoiled milk, skin stretched thin over bones that pulsed faint blue. They gathered round, chanting in tongues older than doom. Drogon dove at them, jaws blazing red, but invisible chains yanked him from the air. He writhed, thrashing, and blue lightning crackled over his hide. Viserion lay still, a white heap marked by crimson drops. Rhaegal was gone, swallowed by darkness or dead. She could not know. Daenerys tried to crawl forward. Every breath was a knife. "Leave them be." The undying one's chant rose, a chorus of hunger. Piet Pri placed thin fingers beneath her chin, lifting her gaze to his hollow face. "Your fire warms us, Khaleesi, but your heart will feed us." The glass candles burn again. The Dothraki sea will bloom with corpses. The free cities will drown in blood. All this we have glimpsed through your eyes. Now you will glimpse eternity through ours. He pressed icy lips to her brow. Cold seeped through her skull, turning thought to brittle glass. She saw vision upon vision. Kingdoms aflame, dragons chained beneath a mountain of snow, a shadow on a painted table, a crown of swords around the neck of a boy with a wolf's eyes. And then she felt her heart stutter. The plaza outside erupted into chaos before the warlock's tower began to sing. Bells? No, dragon screams, warlock cries, stone cracking. Ser Yora hammered at the arch, sword ringing sparks, but invisible walls barred him. Unsullied spears rattled uselessly against unseen force. Zaro arrived shrieking for calm, while Piet Pri's loyalists chanted that the Mother of Dragons was ascending into glory. And above all rose Drogon's roar, a sound of mourning so raw it blistered the sky. Inside, Daenerys' strength fled like water through cupped hands. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel of blue fire. She thought of Drogo riding beneath stars. She thought of the stallion that mounts the world. She thought of home, of red towers, and a smell she barely remembered, lemon cakes cooling on stone sills. Tears found her eyes, and as her heart grew heavy she whispered, Dracarys. A final breath left her lips, carrying a spark of life that flickered out before the warlocks could grasp it. She sagged forward, silver gold hair fanning like molten moonlight over black stone. In that instant every brazier in the house extinguished. The Undying Ones reeled, keening. But Piet-Pri only smiled wider, for death was the feast he had awaited. He did not see Drogon break the last of his unseen fetters. With a sound like thunder cracking marble, the black dragon surged across the hall, jaws yawning red. Constricting shadows shredded. Chains melted in an eye blink. Piet-Pri spun, prepared to multiply once more, but fire met him, fire thicker and darker than true flame, kissed by sorcery and pain. It swallowed him whole, then leapt from corpse to corpse, pillar to pillar. The warp and weft of the tower's magic unraveled, and the ceiling above groaned as though mourning its own doom. Stone crashed. Dust filled the hall. The Undying Ones shrieked, their chanting broken, and where blue bolts struck Drogon, his scales glowed molten, but he pressed on, trampling warlock flesh beneath claw. Viserion rose drunkenly, bleeding, yet his icy fire carved a swath through the enemy. Rhaegal winged from the dark riddled with cuts, and his green flames found Piet-Pri's duplicates, incinerating them in emerald conflagrations. Daenerys lay still amidst the maelstrom, arms slack, face serene in the storm. Drogon curled around her body, keening, while his brothers circled, tearing down any warlock who dared approach. Pillars toppled. The roof began to sag. Azure fire poured from rent stone. In the plaza, the watching crowd gasped as the house of the Undying shuddered like a dying beast. Ser Jorah felt the city quake beneath his boots. He roared Daenerys' name, though he knew she could not answer, and when the great black doors exploded outward on a tide of dust and dragonfire, he charged through the swirling ash. Rhaegal's wing beat bowled him over, heat blistering his face, and still he crawled. The dragon's eyes found him, and for a moment he feared they would burn him to ash. But Drogon merely huddled over Daenerys' form, crooning, smoke curling from his nostrils like the breath of a furnace grieving. Jorah approached on shaking knees. The wound beneath her ribs gaped black, and the blood that leaked from it gleamed strange and iridescent in the half-light, as though mixed with the very shadow that had killed her. Her purple eyes stared sightlessly at the ruin above, lashes glimmering with soot. "My queen," he breathed. Around him the plaza burned, warlocks fled screaming, blue flames licking at silk awnings, gilded statuary melting like wax. Xaro's manse blazed across the canal, casting orange reflections over dead water. Jorah gathered Daenerys in his arms, heedless of the blood that soaked his sleeves. "My queen." Drogon lowered his head, nostrils touching her cheek. A tremor ran through the massive body, and smoke coiled upward, vanishing into dawn. Rhaegal and Viserion joined him, wings mantling like weeping cloaks. The plaza fell silent save for the crackle of dying magic. In that silence a single bell tolled, deep, mournful. One by one other bells answered. Soon the whole of Qarth rang with their lament. Ravens departed the summer sea on black wings, bearing tidings of fire and death. In Pentos, magisters blanched at murmurs of dragons unbound. In Myr, red priests raised voices to Lawlor, reading portents in curling smoke. Across the narrow sea, Varys tilted his head to better hear the flutter of wings in the Red Keep's rookery, while Tyrion Lannister set quill to parchment, summoning the small council to an emergency session. Far to the north, Jon Snow woke from a fever dream of shattered towers and a woman with silver hair whose name he could not recall, only to hear a horn blast across the icy wastes. And eastward still, beyond the Bone Mountains, a shadow on wings of night banked over ancient ruins, its cry echoing across desolation where once dragons ruled unchallenged. The world had shifted. The Dragon Queen was dead, but her children lived, and in their grief lay fury enough to set continents alight. By the time the fires guttered, day had turned to dusk. Ser Jorah stood on a dune of blackened ash outside Qarth's broken eastern gate. Beside him laid a cairn of stone, its rough symmetry a child's token beside the jewel of Essos. The dragons circled above, keening, refusing to leave the pyre. He had wrapped Daenerys in the pale cloak Drogo once gave her, lacing silver bells through her hair as if she rode again at the head of a khalasar. The flames he lit beneath the cairn licked the heavens with tongues of gold and violet. When the pyre collapsed inward, Drogon screamed and dived, scattering embers across the desert. Rhaegal followed, emerald flame crackling. Viserion's white breath spiraled upward into stars. The city behind them quaked anew, though no stone moved. It was fear that shook Qarth now, the knowledge that dragons without a rider hunted their streets. Jorah watched until the fire died to coals. No eggs waited in the embers this time, no miracle of burning life. Only ash and bone and the faint fragrance of smoke. "I failed you," he whispered. I should have stopped her, chained her to her own ship if need be. Gods forgive me. Footsteps crunched on glassy sand. Missandei, cheeks streaked with soot, approached and pressed a small bundle to his breast. Within lay Dragobone, curved and black as night, Daenerys' forearm, fused by heat to the three-headed dragonbone amulet she once wore. She will never leave them, the girl said, voice a torn whisper. And they will never leave her. Jorah closed his eyes. The sun had slipped beneath the horizon, staining the clouds blood-red. Above, three shadows wheeled in ever-widening circles, and their cries promised storm. In the vaults beneath the Tower of the Hand, Varys produced a parchment and unfurled it before Tyrion. From Pentos by way of Bravos. Maester's seal is true. Tyrion read in silence, the wine in his goblet forgotten. Finally he looked up, one green eye gleaming. Three dragons grown to the size of warhorses, bereft of master, grieving and mad, and a Sellsword host already on the move to capture them. How much truth in this, my good spider? Enough. Varys' smile was thin as cobweb. The world loves a vacuum, my lord. And what greater throne than the back of a dragon? Even shattered, the mother of dragons has left a legacy worth killing for. Tyrion set the parchment down. We must hope it is also worth living for, else we shall all be cinders before next winter's snow. Beyond the shivering sea, in the black halls of Ashai, a woman robed in feathers knelt before a heart of glass and flame. Her painted lips parted, and she whispered a name borne back to her on wings of smoke. Daenerys Stormborn, child of shadow and fire, your song is ended, yet the melody lingers. She dipped fingers into hot coals, drawing symbols of ash upon her brow. The dragons mourn, but the world yearns. Another must rise in blood and smoke, or night shall swallow all. The glass heart pulsed. The coals hissed. And far away, three dragons roared into the night, their voices echoing like a broken chord across a world already trembling beneath their wings. Ser Jorah Mormont stood at the prow of a battered cog, eyes fixed east where the moon's path silvered the straits. Rhaegal's shadow flickered beneath the waves, hunting fish. Viserion perched atop the mainmast like a pale sentinel. Drogon flew so high his shape blurred into the night. Somewhere beyond the curve of the horizon lay Slaver's Bay, Astapor's red walls, Yunkai's yellow, Meereen's pyramids of green. Conquest, Daenerys' dream, now a ghost in another dream. But prophecy is a dragon too, Jorah thought, and once roused, it will devour the sky before it sleeps again. He clutched the bone amulet at his throat, her bone, and swore a silent oath. He would find a purpose for her children. He would keep them from cages and chains, from men like Piet Pri and kings like Joffrey. He would shape a world worthy of the queen they lost, or he would die in the forging. Behind him the deck creaked beneath unsullied boots. Missandei stood at their head, eyes bright with unspoken steel. The night is long, Ser, she said. And growing longer. He offered a grim smile. Let us hope dawn still remembers how to rise. The cog cut through black water, sails swollen with wind that smelled of distant storms. Overhead, the dragons cried, and the world, bleeding and bewildered, listened. In the dark heart of Qarth, amid ruins where blue fire once danced, a single ember glowed red, pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. Ash fell away, revealing a shard of obsidian veined with threads of silver. From those veins seeped smoke, thin, sinuous, alive. The ember brightened, shadows writhed, and somewhere deep beneath stone a whisper stirred, soft as the flutter of a moth's wing against glass. Not a name, not a word, but the shape of a promise yet unfulfilled. Fire remembers, even when flesh forgets, and dragons never forget. Ser Jorah Mormont awakened to the creak of rigging and the sour tang of bilge that seeped through every plank of the battered cog. Dawn had not yet grayed the world beyond the cabin's single warped shutter, but the deck already thrummed with wary life, unsullied in silent formation, Dothraki groomed boys shushing skittish horses, sailors muttering prayers to every god of wind and wave. Above them wheeled three shapes blacker than night, revolving in wide, restless orbits, dragons that had not slept since the pyre. Their keening sang through the timbers like iron scraped across stone, a lament without pause or mercy. Jorah's bones ached with it, but he would not bid them hush. Grief needed its song. He rose and belted his sword, letting the familiar weight settle at his hip, though steel felt small beside the power that shadowed their crossing. Each hiss of rope and whine of cleat carried rumor east. Every harbor whispered of dragonfire seen over Qarth, of blue flame that peeled marble like fruit skin and left warlocks weeping in ruins. Those tales outran them by sail and sandsteed alike, and with each retell, Ling Daenerys grew taller, more terrible, alive again at her dragon's flank. Lies, perhaps, yet Yora clung to them in darkness, better a myth that breathed than memory that lay cold as ash. Missandei waited on the quarterdeck, cloak fluttering around her thin shoulders. Sleeplessness smudged her eyes, but resolve held her spine straight as any spear. When he joined her, she nodded toward the horizon where faint light bruised the rim of sea. Astapor by nightfall, sire. If the winds hold. Astapor, he echoed. The word tasted of blood and brick dust. Rumor painted the Red City with cruelty, masters who gilded slaves in bronze, streets washed each dust to sluice congealed filth from the cobbles. Yet behind those crimson walls slept an army unlike any other. The Unsullied we sail with number 700. Astapor boasts 8,000. Sold, bred, and broken, Missandei said, voice a blade of frost. Daenerys abhorred the trade, yet she spoke often of freeing slaves with fire. Yora watched Drogon dive, midnight wings slashing dawn's pale throat. Fire we have. A queen we have lost. All day the wind stayed kind, and by late afternoon Astapor's green landward walls surfaced from haze, crowned by the harpy's spiked helm. Ships rocked at anchored moorings beside hulks of burnt orange whose sails hung furled like tiger hides. The cog hailed the harbor chain, and gold-eared slaves rode forth to barter passage. Coins changed hands, and a cage of iron teeth lifted from the water Astapor's welcome to strangers. Drogon banked low above the masthead, sending the harbor galley into shrieking panic. Rowers vaulted overboard rather than burn. Their splashes frothed white as gull feathers on the dark water. Sailors spat oaths, and Yora heard the city's bells begin a frantic clangor. They disembarked onto a stone quay where heat rose in shimmering curtains, stinking of rot and brine. The Unsullied formed ranks behind him, shields dull red with dried blood from the Qarthine streets. Their captain, a solemn man named Mors, snapped commands in the husked tongue of Astapor, and the local dockmasters shrank from the discipline they once sold. Children scurried to vantage rooftops, bare feet raising eddies of ochre dust. Merchants gaped at the dragons etching spirals overhead, black, green, and pale gold, haloed by late sun like store-birds of prophecy. Word flew faster than wings, and soon a throng clogged the approach road. Slavers in yellow togas, perfumers dabbing sweat with silk scarves, cup purses edging close, then flinching when Regal dropped low enough to rattle shutters. Yora's party advanced beneath a hush heavy as desert noon. Even the market dogs lost their bark. Tall gates opened without challenge. Within, Maester's square yawned wide, dominated by the towering harpy statue whose broken chains once symbolized a freedom granted only to the powerful. Crimson bricks gleamed oily under dragon shadow. From an arcade of black marble stepped a man Yora recognized by reputation, Krasny's Emo Naklas, beard scented with citrus oil, his eyes two chips of obsidian glistening behind perfumed smoke. Krasny's bowed not at all, but his voice dripped courtesy. Great beasts you bring, Sir Knight, and fine eunuch soldiers, though not ours. How may Astapor serve? Translation came a heartbeat later from his slave girl, a child with shaved scalp and hollow gaze. Yora resisted the urge to reach for steel. These soldiers once guarded a queen, Daenerys Stormborn. She is slain. We seek healing for her dragons and provisions for a march north. The slaver's smile bent like a scorpion's tail. North? Slaver's Bay has no road worth such coinage. All gold flows south across the sea. Regal shrieked overhead, and plaster showered from the harpy's helm. Krasny's flinched, sweat beading his upper lip. Yora let silence yawn until the man shifted on his sandals. Our queen's dream lives in them, he said. We will pay in fire if silver fails. Missandei translated, but each syllable carried new iron. Krasny's weighed his odds and bowed a fraction deeper. The city offers hospitality. Behind him, overseers whispered of charred marketplaces and the cost of scorched brick. Rest your dragons in the bone gardens. Slaves will fetch water you. We fetch for ourselves. Missandei's interruption cracked like frost on glass. She stepped forward, and the girl translating Krasny's words met her gaze, a spark passing between prisoner and free woman swift as lightning. Yora saw it and wondered what flame it might light. As sunset bled mauve across the salt flats, Yora walked the bone gardens, shattered flagstones, beneath arches carved with scenes of slave children devoured by dogs for petty theft. Here the masters buried Unsullied who died in training, the bones bleached white as chalk. Dragons prowled among broken ribs and femurs, wings brushing dead boughs, as if they too sensed kinship in ruin. Drogon nosed a skull, smoke curling from flared nostrils, then turned a crimson eye upon Yora, an accusation cast in embered glass. I cannot bring her back, the knight murmured. But I can lead you to what she wanted. The dragon blinked, slow and unforgiving. Then he spread his wings and sprang skyward, shattering a ribcage to powder in the updraft. Behind the gardens rose the training pits where unsullied boys fought to first blood beneath braziers that never quenched. Yora climbed a crumbling wall and watched a new cohort drill. Whip cracks timed to heartbeat, shields ringing in perfect unison. Masters barked commands while chained mothers wailed from cages overlooking the ring, each cry another lash on their son's resolve. Yora had seen cruelty enough to steal a heart, yet tonight the sight twisted like a corkscrew in his gut, sharper than before. Daenerys' voice seemed to drift through dusk. I will take what is mine, and I will break chains. His fist tightened on the bone amulet, smooth edge biting flesh. This city must burn, he whispered, but desire alone could not forge conquest. Dragons were terrible yet untrained, unsullied few. Enslavers beheld 3 crown powers, Astapor, Yukai, Myrine. To strike one would rouse all. Footsteps approached across gravel. The sandy eye stared up at the pit, face ashen flame and torchlight. The girl with Krasni's is named Cleonet, she said. She translated lies all day, yet in one breath she told me a truth. When the masters drink apricot wine at dawn, their guard slackens. The unsullied commanders gather for inspection by the south gate, unguarded save 2 overseers. Yora studied her. The child translator's confession was risk enough to earn a lifelong flaying. She would trade her tongue for chains broken, he said. Wouldn't we all? Missandei answered, voice soft as waves over shells. Then she glanced at Drogon circling beyond the courtyard. The dragons trust none but you, sire. Yet they feel your doubt. Choose quickly, or we shall lose them to wrath. She left him with twilight and memory. Yora looked once more at the pit where a boy no older than 9 drove a spear through his cohort's thigh, earning cheers from slavers, sobs from the caged women. He turned away, heart hammering. Night draped Astapor in velvet heat. From the bone gardens Drogon's roar shook dust from ancient archways. Yora knelt between the dragon's crouched forms, palm pressed to each scalding flank in turn. Fire obeys no man, he told them, praying the old Valyrian carried weight beyond his broken accent. But fire chooses its path. Help me strike, and I swear chains will fall. Flame licked his words, sulfur sting and heat so intense tears evaporated before falling. Regal's green eyes narrowed, and his maw split in what might have been a scent. Viserion hissed, white steam spiraling skyward like frostfire bleeding into dark. Drogon only stared, nostrils pulsing, then thrust his head forward until his horned brow touched Yora's scarred breastplate. A fraction of that weight could crush ribs, yet Yora held firm. For your mother, he breathed. Missandei waited beyond the wall, torch guttering. Together they crossed silent lanes to the blockhouse where the unsullied Captain Moores quartered his legion. Within, the eunuch veteran listened without expression to Yora's plan. When the night finished, Moores turned to his rank sergeants and spoke 3 words in the husked tongue. One by one, helmets lowered in a nod of obedience. No slave longed for freedom more fiercely than one bred to die. Before dawn hurled rose light across Slaver's Bay, Yora walked atop Astapor's northern parapet, breath silvering in pre-dawn chill. Below lay barrel stores of lamp oil and pitch confiscated from harbor warehouses overnight. Unsullied archers waited with fire arrows, Dothraki horse boys tightened girths outside the eastern stables. Dragons perched on the ramparts, 3 living siege engines poised to rend Slaverstone. When the 4th bell rang, bronze doors groaned open at the south gate. A column of fresh unsullied boys, blooded but not yet sold, marched into the killing ground, their masters lounging in gilded litters behind. Yora lifted a hand. Torches plunged into pitch and the night erupted. Flame raced in rivulets down the slope, licking at slave market stalls and silk awnings until cloth ignited in curtains of gold. Overseers screamed, scrambling for water, slaves wept, confused by hope forged of horror. Drogon took the sky in a thunder of wings, and his roar splintered windows. A spear of red flame jetted from his throat, striking the harpy statue square in the chest. Stone exploded, shards cartwheeling into the crowd. Regal strafed along the walkway, emerald fire kissing battlements, melting spearheads and flesh alike. Viserion's frost-white breath hissed over rooftop cisterns, turning water to scalding steam that burst cooper roofs as though giants hammered from inside. By the time Astapor's city guard mustered, half their watchtowers burned. Krasny's Mo Naklaws staggered from his villa, cloak aflame, screaming for crossbows. An unsullied spear blossomed from his belly before the plea reached lips. The child translator Cleonet emerged behind him, hair smoking, and cut his throat with a fruit seller's pruning knife. Blood spattered her shaved scalp. She stared at the blade as though seeing it for first time, then vanished into smoke. In the streets, slave chains broke like rotten lath beneath Dothraki rocks. Freedmen seized whips, turning them on former owners. Women dragged branding irons from forges and pressed them against masters' cheeks, still wet with tears. The Unsullied tore off red worm helmets, hurling them into pyres of ledger books and manacles. Above, the dragons howled as if exulting in the storm they birthed. Yora fought through the chaos to the western plaza where a final wedge of guards defended the treasury house, heart of Astapor's gold. Missandei, swordless but fearless, slipped through smoke, ferrying children to safety. When she reached his side, her dress was singed, eyes bright with soot and conviction. "The city falls, sire," she gasped. "Now we must guide." He nodded, throat raw from ash. "Sound the bronze gongs." Speak the words she would have spoken. Their voices rose in tandem across the roar of fire. All men must die, but first they must live free. The phrase echoed down burning corridors, and those who held blades paused, turned, and saw not a knight nor a scribe, but a shape cut from legend. The three-headed dragon ablaze upon the night, feeding on oppression. The tide shifted. Slaves herded masters toward the plaza's heart rather than butchering them where they crawled. Yora felt the city tilt, axis pivoting around a promise heavier than gold: justice. Yet justice birthed new dangers. Outside the gates, envoys from Yunkai had arrived on swift galleys to treat for unsullied purchase. Their sails curled in smoke rolling off the walls. From those decks, oculars surely tracked the dragons, their masters weighing opportunity against obliteration. Yunkai was rich, Meereen richer still. Both might muster gold and mercenaries enough to buy scorpion bolts tipped in wildfire. Unchecked, they would close jaws on liberated Astapor by moon's turn. That night, Yora convened a council beneath the charred stump where the harpy once leered. Unsullied captains sat cross-legged beside freed scribes and mothers still shaking with terror. Cleonet knelt among them, shaving remains of Krasnys' beard from her tunic with meticulous fury. When Yora laid out the choices, fortify or march, arguments flared hotter than the lingering fires. Some urged walls rebuilt, others begged to press north, freeing Yunkai before her masters rallied. Missandei listened, then rose, voice carrying across cinders. Daenerys spoke of a chain the length of the world, every link a life in bondage. She did not seek to guard one link here, another there. She vowed to break them all. Silence followed, broken only by distant crackle of embered beams. Yora felt the weight of the bone amulet heavy as a throne around his neck. He met the gaze of each dragon where they perched upon toppled pillars, eyes like molten moons, waiting. "Then we do not wait," he said. "At first light, we march for Yunkai." Word fled on wings of rumor swifter than ravens, Astapor fallen not to plague nor revolt but to dragons led by a foreign knight wearing Valyrian bone. Yunkai's council of wise masters assembled in marble sanctum, debating coin and crossbow counts. Their spies spoke of three beasts grown vast as river barges, yet still young, killable if one dared. They dispatched riders to the wind-blown cell's word company, gold opened gates where courage failed. In Meereen, great masters dismissed talk of attack as thrice-boiled gull spew. Their harpy banners flew over pyramids 600 feet tall, scorpion ballistae nested on every terrace. But that night a dream gripped the youngest heir of House Paul. He saw a woman bathed in moon flame riding a dragon of shadow over Meereen's Temple of Graces, and her tears fell as black rain upon the marble floors. He woke screaming, and his cries echoed through the palace until dawn painted walls crimson. On Dragonstone, Melisandre of Askai watched painted flames writhe across obsidian hearth and whispered, "The Dragon Queen is ash, but her fire spreads. Lightbringer will need such heat." Stannis Baratheon clenched jaw upon jaw, wondering if the Red Woman dreamed madness. Yet he too had heard ravens croak of dragons across the narrow sea. Power unseen since Aegon swelled beyond horizon, and power drew lesser fires to its furnace. North of the wall, Jon Snow stood atop the fist of the First Men, surveying dead fires where Mance Rayder's camp once smoldered. Whispers on the wind told of new kings born in shadow, and his dreams bled with wings black and red. He felt a pull not south toward the wall but east, across gray water, as though a song too ancient to name had reached across world's edge to pluck the strings of his marrow. But Jorah Mormont knew nothing of distant prophets and kings. He marched at the spearhead of a column of 10,000 former slaves, across the pale ribbon road that linked Astapor to Yunkai. Dragons roost by day on moving wagons rigged with scaffold poles and tarps. By night they hunted herds in the greenbelt, leaving steaming carcasses for the hungry throngs. Dust plumes marked their passage, an exodus of tongues and lashes discarded, forging an army bound by shared loss. Cleonet became voice to that grief. Each night she stood on an overturned cart and recounted horrors survived, branding pits, breeding pens, the pitiless weeders who culled slow learners from unsullied ranks. Her words stoked fury into iron, forging from sorrow a weapon with an edge that gleamed beneath dragon fire. When the sun rose on the 12th day, Yunkai's yellow walls loomed ahead, banners of the wise masters snapping in salty wind. Yunkish scorpions bristled atop ramparts, manned by mercenaries in mismatched mail. Outside the south gate camped the wind-blown, tattered horses, bright silk tents, a serpent banner coiled around a man's skull. Jorah rode to parley beneath white flag, Drogon circling above like a storm crow. The Windblown's commander, a flamboyant Ibonese named the Tattered Prince, met him with sardonic grin. A Mormont on Associ Sands. I fought your Bear Queen's bannermen once, the pay was poor but the songs lively. I offer better coin and grander songs, Jorah replied. Ride with us, and when the gates fall every freed slave may vote on how Yunkai shall live. The prince laughed, tusks flashing. Noble talk for a knight who serves a corpse. The harpy's purse weighs heavy too. Jorah nodded skyward where Drogon hung motionless, in line with the sun, so his black silhouette merged with blinding glare. Gold buys many things, but not shade from flame. Choose soon. He wheeled his horse, cloak snapping like a banner of grief and iron. At dusk, bolts hissed from Yunkish walls, seeking dragons diving in faint. The Windblown did not intervene. Jorah anchored his camp out of scorpion range and watched the Sellsword banners move closer to the city, allying with the masters for richer purse. The sight stung, yet he expected no less. Coin forged quicker loyalties than blood. That night the ranks gathered around cookfires guttering in desert wind. Children clung to mothers who knotted torn silk into new banners, a three-headed dragon wreathed in broken chains. Jorah spoke of dawn assault, but Cleonet raised a hand. Not dawn, she said. Hearts harden in sunlight. Strike in deep night, while fear wraps minds like cold cloth. Unsullied captains approved, and so, beneath a moonside thin, the army advanced. Dothraki outriders swept ahead to cut the Windblown's tether lines, spooking horses. Dragons dived like living meteors, wings silent until flame exploded along the outer palisade. Camp tents erupted, mercenaries scrambled for helms, horses screamed and stampeded through lances. In the chaos, unsullied blocks marched, shields glimmering faintly in starlight. Yunkai's gates shuddered under siege ram fashioned from a mast of Krasny's pleasure barge. Sapling torches ignited resin along its length, turning it to a battering torch. Jorah rode beside it, bone amulet rattling against his breastplate. As the third thunderous impact cracked timbers, Drogon descended upon the right-hand tower, crushing stone beneath talons. Scorpion crews leapt to safety or to death on flagstones far below, before emerald fire from Regal baked the ammunition stores into slag. Vizirion's icy breath tempered the flames, fusing melted rock into a glassy scab that sealed arrow loops shut. When the gates burst inward, Unsullied surged through in tidal cohesion, 8 men front swallowing courtyards, gladii spearing through quilted jack. Slave soldiers inside dropped arms the moment freed ranks crashed upon them, raising hands and pleading in husked Astapori dialect. Neither monster nor master, only man, they begged. The victors ushered them rearward, shackles hammered off on paving stones. The chant began again, louder, Mother's Will. Jorah galloped through smoke-snarled alleys, guided by Cleonet and Missandei toward the Master's Hall. Marbled doors slabbed with lapis stood ajar, within sprawled a melee of gold-sashed nobles stabbing each other for hidden coin vault keys. Dragons soared overhead, bass wing beats rattling gilt chandeliers until they fell like meteors upon the marble. Jewel-encrusted statues toppled, tributes to conquest shattered underfoot of slaves now armed with broken columns. The tattered prince met Jorah at the foot of the grand staircase, sword dripping crimson. Your fur. He has robbed me of employer, he said almost cheerfully. What wage to keep my men from plundering these pretty things? Leave the living and take what gold you can bear, Jorah replied. But swear on your Sellsword honor you will free every slave you meet until the war is done. The Ibonese puffed his mustaches, then inclined his head. Gold and glory. A fair wage. He strode away, whistling a tune of old Valyrian revolt, his men trailing behind to fill saddlebags with rubies. By dawn, the wise masters knelt in the plaza stripped to loincloths, wrists bound before broken statues of their goddess. Cleonette climbed the harpy pedestal and addressed a throng of silent thousands. Her words flowed across languages, each phrase repeated by freed translators. The era of chains has ended. No man may own another. The dragons will take no tribute but justice. Missandei, standing beside Yora, whispered, "She speaks as Daenerys would." "Better," he muttered. Yet a knife of sorrow twisted inside. He felt the emptiness of the queen's absence most keenly in victory, like triumph soured by missing salt. That night, Yukai burned in pockets, storehouses of shackles heaped and torched. Dragons patrolled the sky, hurting sparks away from tents of the freed. Winds carried ash north toward Meereen, black snow drifting across desert league on league, each flake a herald of change. In Meereen's grand forum, great masters convened beneath walls inlaid with green tiles depicting dragons bowing to harpies. Now the tiles seemed to shift in torchlight, wings stirring as though memory rebelled. Messengers gasped through each gate. Astapor lost, Yukai stormed, dragons 3, an army swelling, Sel's words pledged by fire. Panic poisoned the assembly, yet pride held their tongues. Meereen was the mother of slavers, first forged, last to fall. But inside the pyramid of Harsthar lived a child of 8 summers, Galaz's ward, who dreamed each night of a silver-haired woman smiling from Pyre's heart. In her small voice, she told the court priestesses that the dragons wept for a mother slain, and they would not rest until all chains shattered. The priestesses whispered of prophecy in children's tongues. The masters scoffed. That scoffing ended when, 3 nights later, the sky above Meereen reddened though no sun yet rose. A roar rolled over the sand sea like thunder woken early. Watchmen on the city's outer towers cried warning. But their cries died as 3 shadows breached the dawn. Dragons descended on Meereen not as siege machines but as heralds. They carved the sign of an open shackle in scorched furrows across the great plaza, then rose again into cloud, leaving stone molten and smoking. The message needed no translation. Yora's army encamped a league south, banners of broken chains rippling. Unsullied commanders scouted walls, mapping scorpion placements, while Dothraki herded captured war elephants toward siege lines. The tattered prince, pockets heavy, trained fresh volunteer archers in Sel's word tricks, claiming each freedman's arrow should fly as straight as coin. Yet as plans crystallized, emissaries emerged from Meereen's gates, priestesses of the Great Pyramid robed in purple and gold, bearing olive branches wrought from copper. They requested parley beneath the sign of Night's Child, Qarth of the Shadow, a mysterious woman said to guard secrets of dragons and doom. Yora agreed, curiosity pricking. In a ruined amphitheater half buried by dune, the meeting unfolded. Qarth wore a lacquered mask shaped like a morning moon, her eyes behind glimmered with tears unshed. "I grieve," she said, voice low as desert wine slipping through catacombs. Daenerys's flame was meant to temper iron hearts. Her fall has loosed fire unbound. Yora kept his hand on the bone amulet. "Her flame lives in those who march." "Flame without breath becomes wildfire," Qarth murmured. "Take care it does not consume dream and dreamer alike." Others gathered, drawn by heat, lovers of shadow, kings of winter, spiders of court. The song of ice and fire yet requires its singer. He felt chill prickle under scorched plate. "Speak plain, Shadowbinder. A dragon has 3 heads. One lies in ash. 2 wander seeking voice. If they find not harmony, night will fall on all." She raised a gloved hand and traced patterns in the air, sigils Yora recognized from old Valyrian scrolls: comet, sword, weeping star. "Find the song, Sere Knight, or burn the world to deafness." Before he could answer, Qarth retreated into dawn haze, leaving priestesses kneeling in her wake. Missandei approached, concern etched deep. "What counsel?" He shook his head, feeling the amulet warm against heart. "Prophecies are chains of another kind," he said. "We shall break those too." Siege preparations advanced, yet Meereen's gates remained shut, scorpions trained skyward. Dragons hovered beyond bolt range, patient as winter sea. Cleonette rallied freedmen into cohorts drilled by former unsullied instructors, an army grown in fortnight, hammered by shared memory of Lash. But cracks spread inside the liberated host. Freed Yunkish nobles petitioned for mercy for their families now slaves in Meereen. Astapori artisans wanted to return home and rebuild. Dothraki clamored to move on and raid laser-rich in fat sheep. Yora held councils nightly, soothing factions, invoking Daenerys' promise, yet he felt threadbare. A king's crown sat ill upon exile's brow, and though they called him Lord of Ash and Chains, each knee that bent seemed to ask for more than he could give. Drogon sensed his turmoil. The Black Dragon's flights grew longer, circles wider. Twice he destroyed scouting parties from Meereen. Once he landed in camp and ripped apart a butcher's wagon for sport, scattering terrified freedmen. Yora laid calming hands on hot scale but saw the wildness mounting behind red eyes, grief fermenting into rage. On the 23rd eve of the siege, when campfires winked across plain like scattered rubies, Missandei found Yora alone beside the queen's old saddle salvaged from the Balerian's hold. He traced stitching where her small hands once rested. "She would have found kinder roads," he whispered. "She would have followed the dragons," Missandei answered. "And they follow you, do they? Or do I cling to their tail, dragged through fire I cannot control? You chose the Bone Gardens, Sire. You chose Astapor's gates. Choose again." He looked up as she knelt, candor shining. "Choose what?" "To live," she said. "Not as shadow of a queen, but as light for her children." Dawn brought decision. Yora summoned commanders, freed of pomp, and laid forth final design. Not siege but spark. One gate would open, one chain break, and the city's own slaves would rise. Unsullied would breach sewage tunnels once used to dispose of strangers' corpses. Dothraki would ride the rooftops to keep Scorpion crews pinned. Dragons would strike only as shield against massed ballistae, no raising. The aim was a living city, not a corpse pyre. As camps shifted into readiness, a last raven arrived from Westeros, its scroll-bearing wax of King's Landing. Tyrion Lannister's script curled like snakes. Word of Queen's death reaches realm. Factions stir. Invitations extend to alliance against common enemy of lords. If dragons fly west, know some here welcome breaker of chains. Signed, a friend of the realm. Yora burned the letter, but memory lingered. Westeros, the throne Daenerys sought, now reached back, a viper's caress. He swore nothing would steal her dream again, even if he bore it alone. On the new moon, clouds cloaked stars. Campfires smothered, signals whispered through darkness. Unsullied detachments slipped into culvert grates pried wide. Dothraki suctioned hooves in wet rags for silence, scaling terraced houses near scorpion nests. Dragons waited near camp perimeter, breath steaming, wings flicking restless. Within Meereen, a night watchman dozed beside a brazier. A finger of green flame licked from behind, snuffing his torch in hissing silence. Regal soared low, shadow swallowing glare, then vanished behind pyramid spire. At that moment, Unsullied burst up through a street grate, spears lashing. Slave domestics, roused by clamor, saw eunuch collars broken and fell to their knees sobbing. One by one, they seized kitchen knives, cleavers, masonry hammer. Whispers of rebellion spread like quicksilver. By the time Scorpion crews realized their numbers dwindled, many had died gagged in their bunks by stable lads. The lower city roared. Slave herders rushed to quell, but found doors barred from inside. Harpy banners torn free cascaded like wilted flowers into alley fires. Yora rode through shattered fish market gate at head of Dothraki wedge. Viserion circled above, frosted breath shattering roof tiles. Unsullied cohorts poured from drainage openings behind them, forming shield walls to guide civilians away from fighting. Every plan turned to chaos once blood scented the air, but not ruinous chaos. It was music, raw and untrained, yet true. Near the Temple of Graces, a last knot of masters barricaded themselves behind bronze doors ornamented with scenes of harpy triumph. Drogon descended, claws raking through bronze like parchment. Yora leapt from saddle while molten droplets still hissed, sword carving a path among guards. In the nave, lit by jade lanterns, the masters cowered around a brazen idol. One raised shackled wrists, pleading for mercy in High Valyrian. Yora saw a boy no older than 6 chained to the idol's talons. A nursemaid's child likely seized as charm against dragons. "Let the child go," he commanded. The master obeyed, tears tracking gold glitter. Cleonette strode forward, hair braided with broken links, and uttered sentence, "Harm done is harm repaid." She pointed to the door. The masters were led out for judgment by the freed. When dawn finally bled over the horizon, Meereen's pyramids stood intact, but harpy icons lay tumbled, spattered with blood and dragon fire. Slave collars piled in pyramids of their own, mute monuments to a night of unshackling. Dragons perched upon the great pyramid's pinnacle, wings spread to greet first light, their cries a note of mingled triumph and mourning. Yora stood beside Missandei and Cleonet atop the steps. 10,000 voices thronged below, chanting not the Targaryen name, nor queen, but a new title braided from grief and purpose, Dracarys Reborn. He felt the desert wind tug at his cloak, and for the first time since Qarth bitterness retreated, replaced by sharp, terrifying hope. But beyond Meereen stretched a horizon teeming with unknowns, Westeros's beckoning crown, Dothraki Khaal's nursing ambitions, the Iron Bank tallying debts of flame. And somewhere across ice-rimed northern fields, whispers claimed another power stirred, white shadows marching where no fire burned. Yora lifted the bone amulet, its polished surface catching dawn like a shard of crimson glass. "Guide me," he whispered to the memory etched within. In response, Drogon spread his wings and bellowed, a roar that rolled down marble flank, across liberated streets, over the walls of Meereen, and far into lands yet untouched by the promise or peril of dragons unchained. Night spent itself in the lambent glow of braziers guttering along Meereen's wind market, and in the cooling hush Jorah Mormont found that silence had shape. A broad-shouldered thing that crouched over victory and breathed unease into triumph. The city was theirs, yet dawn revealed more questions than corpses, empty granaries that must be filled before winter's sea mists drifted inland, canals choked with the stone rubble of shattered harpies, tribunals of freedmen who begged justice swifter than the sun's climb. Every promise Daenerys had once laid upon these bricks now rested upon his shoulders, and though bone amulet pressed warm against his heart, it granted neither crown nor map, only memory. He walked the roof of a half-toppled granary where the city's ragged skyline unfurled toward the sunrise. Below, a ribbon of emerald fire still crawled along a broken colonnade, Regal's final pass, and men with leather buckets labored to bank it with sand. Black smoke curled upward, folding into shapes that vanished as soon as he tried to name them. Almost he imagined her standing there, silvery hair glinting copper in dawn's first kiss, telling him again that to conquer was not enough. But the roof was bare save for clay tiles and his own shadow. Wind stirred. Drogon banked across the river beyond the fifth gate, wings scooping great troughs of mist that gleamed blood-pink in rising light. A flock of white egrets exploded before him, and for heartbeat upon heartbeat the dragon vanished within a veil of feathers, re-emerging with a booming roar that scattered the birds in chaotic swirls. Yora watched, torn between awe and creeping dread. Drogon's sorties had grown longer, his kills messier, a whole herds of aurochs left half-eaten on riverbanks, villages fled in panic before any order could reach them. Grief had carved a raw cavity in the beast, and fire spilled from the wound. Regal and Viserion were little softer. They stalked the high terraces of the Great Pyramid as though pacing a fortress under siege, yellow eyes ever fixed on streets below. Freed children slipped them goat carcasses in joyous terror, yet shadows sometimes swallowed the children and screams echoed up lime-washed alleyways. A mother approached the gates at moonset bearing her son's charred bones wrapped in cotton and placed them beneath the broken talon of the harpy's toppled statue. Yora had ordered 1,000 bushels of grain delivered to the grieving quarter, but grain cured nothing that flame had stolen. Missandei found him atop the roof as bells began their slow morning toll, a sound that seemed to belong more to funerals than to coronations. "The council waits," she said, voice raw from endless hours translating pleas and verdicts. "The freed wish to know whom they obey, now that chains are dust." He followed her down narrow stairs to the Hall of Meereen's Eye, where stone columns still bore soot stains from the night the dragons carved their promise. There, benches once reserved for masters were given to butchers, grooms, glassblowers. Everywhere he looked, Yora saw the faces of people who believed victory itself would sprout fruit. At the hall's center, a dais held 3 empty thrones, marble monstrosities chiseled shaped to harpy wings. They repelled him, hulking effigies of cruelty, yet he mounted the dais with Missandei and Cleonet at either side because symbols mattered more than comfort. Silence thickened. Unsullied stood like bronzed pillars against rear walls, Dothraki lounged in corners, blood still crusting a rocks. A baker named August stepped forward, his wrists still ringed with half-healed manacle scars, and raised a trembling hand. "Who governs?" he asked. "The dragons obey none, and hunger will not heed fire." Murmurs rippled. Yora weighed answers and heard none ring true. He raked scarred fingers through graying hair and spoke plainly. "Governance will not come from a single sword or from dragonfire alone. We shall elect a council of 9, 3 from Meereen's freed, 3 from Astapor's, 3 from Yunkai's. Each moon we shall rotate 1 seat through choice of the people. Until that council forms, I serve only as guardian of Daenerys' promise." Low hums, skeptical yet not hostile. A barefoot seamstress rose next. "And food? Smoke does not feed babes. We plant," Yora said, "and we bargain. The grain fleets of Volantis sail before autumn. Emissaries leave this day with coin and dragon's shadow behind them. Yet all promises felt hollow while Drogon roamed unbridled. Even now his distant roar filtered through shutter slats like the threat of a storm. Eyes flickered upward following the echo. Cleonette's hand brushed hilt of dagger at her belt as though steel could parry thunder. The session broke after midday. From shaded alcove Qarth emerged. How she passed guards Yora never learned, and she murmured as she passed, "Bone and breath will founder on the smoking sea if wind, and will be at war." Then she was gone, leaving the air cold. That evening a rider arrived from New Guise, bearing scrolls stamped with a kraken sigil half melted by candle wax. The message, penned in crabbed, salt-scored script, offered Ireborn longships in return for rights to pillage the rich slave ports of Basilisk Isles under Meereen's banner. Yora set parchment aflame over a brazier. There would be no trade in chains, whatever mask it wore. But the raven that followed soothed him less. Across the narrow sea, visions of dragons set Lannisport into uproar. Merchants feared smoking sails on horizon. King Tommen, still but a boy, sent gold cloaks to stand watch upon every parapet. Somewhere in Old Town, archmasters quarreled over leather scrolls that spoke of the Doom's twin, fireborn of flame and sorrow. Word traveled, and with it sailed fear, and fear would birth knives. He retreated to the quiet of the queen's old chambers high in the pyramid, rooms stripped of their silks, yet still haunted by faint lavender perfume that never seemed to fade. He poured wine but left it untouched on the sill and unrolled a map of the eastern world. His finger traced the smoking sea where Valyria's broken peninsula spread like a spider cast in obsidian. No man sailed there and returned whole. Plague of grayscale and worse stalked those mists. But in the Doom's shadow lay old magics, and perhaps answers. The dragons had been forged there, maybe still the ruins held secrets to tame their grief. Footsteps approached outside. Cleonette entered without ceremony. "The windblown drill fresh freedmen," she said. "They ask if winter clothing will come from Qohor. Some speak of marching west to Pentos, following whispers of a prince who carries Targaryen blood." "A prince?" Yora's throat tightened. "Illyrio's puppet, I wager. Griff, they call him. If dragons chase his banner, we invite civil war among the freed." "A civil war they will wage with or without blessing," Cleonette replied. Candlelight played across her shaven scalp, now dusted with stubble that glinted like copper filings. "Hope needs faces. They know the queen is ash, they need living flame." The wine cooled. Yora stared into dark glass of night beyond the balcony. "What they need is time," he murmured. "But time bows to no man." He unfurled another scroll, an accounting of the grain stores discovered rotting behind sealed granary doors. Vermin had claimed half. The freed bellies would clamor long before ships arrived. Unless the sky itself bore harvest. Dragons flew far, they might herd gazelles toward pens, they might ignite forests to flush game. Yet instructing them demanded bond deeper than rains. And so again his gaze drifted to Valyria. Missandei entered next, breathless. "The dragons," she began, voice trembling, but with wonder, not fear. "They gather upon the eastern wall. All three, perched like gargoyles. They have not done so together since before Astapor. Something draws them." Yora strode to the balcony. Distance blurred details, but against deepening indigo sky he saw the silhouettes, three colossal wings folded, tails coiled. Their heads faced due east, toward the moonlit waste and the ruinous sea beyond. Drogon's throat glimmered with faint ember red, an engine idling. Rhaegal and Viserion rumbled in answer, harmonizing low pulses that vibrated the air. "They see something," Missandei whispered. "Or hear." Yora felt the stone beneath boots tremble, no earthquake, but resonance, song pitched below hearing, felt not H. Erd. The children of fire shared secrets carried on lunar tides, men stood deaf. A decision crystallized like frost on night air. He turned to the two women. "I sail at dawn," he said. "Southeast along coast into the smoking sea. I will seek what hatched them and hope it teaches how to heal them. If I fail, Meereen's hope may perish in fire unenclosed." Missandei's mouth opened, but Cleonette spoke first. "A suicide voyage," she snapped. "Half your council will condemn folly, the other half will follow you and empty the city of strength. I leave council behind." He clenched map tight. 9 seats as promised, yours among them, Cleonette. Guide as you judge. Missandei shall accompany me, her tongue's bridge worlds. Missandei nodded once, serene despite pallor. "And the dragons?" she asked. "They choose," Yora said simply. "But I doubt they will let me stray far." 4 days later the Carrick Stormcrow set sail under canvas patched from 3 cities' banners. its hold brimmed with dried lentils, casks of brackish water spiced with citrus peel against rot, and bundles of obsidian spearheads quarried from dragonstone decades earlier, black glass to barter with ghosts. A skeleton crew of 30 volunteered, unsullied veterans who had known only obedience and now sought purpose, 3 Qarthian sail hands who claimed star charts of the Valyrian coast, and Grey Worm himself, silent sentinel with eyes like wet slate. Atop the mainmast, Drogon perched, wings ruffling rigging. His weight bent the spar, but his gaze followed horizon where scarlet dawn met silver sea. Regal and Viserion shadowed overhead, gliding lazy thermals. On the quay Cleanet clasped Yora's forearm. "Return with wisdom," she said, stern as any quartermaster. "Or with nothing at all, a better void than false light." He left her with a tight nod, uncertain which outcome he dreaded more. The Stormcrow cleared Myreen's harbor by mid-morning, sails belly plump with river wind. Behind them smoke still rose from smoldering harpy effigies, though new banners of broken chains fluttered on every rampart. Ahead lay endless turquoise water that would soon darken to volcanic purple where the Doom's shadow paled the sun. For 2 days currents held gentle. Regal speared fish whose silver bellies blossomed pink beneath the waves. Viserion bathed in sun-heated spray, frost breath sizzling. Drogon seldom left his mast, his eyes fixed east as if memory guided him through mists to a cradle no man had seen. Nights, the crew lit no lamps for fear of pirates, instead the dragons circled high, amber throats glowing faint. Once a corsair cutter ventured close, a single roar sent it tacking away, crew scrambling like deer before a graph fire. On the 3rd morning the sea changed scent, salt laced with brimstone and something older, metallic, like blood long dried on iron. Gray-green swells rose even under calm sky, vapor gathered, turning daylight milky and flat. The smoking sea. Whispers told of waters that boiled without flame, of CWIRMS with skin like rusted armor, of stone men drifting upon shattered hulls moaning pleas for mercy rotted from their throats. Yet Stormcrow cut onward, prow groaning as if fearing what keel might scrape. Yora stood at bow with Missandei. She recited Valyrian riddles gleaned from dusty scrolls where the river meets flame, song splits the sky, follow the ashes to find the egg that never shattered. She frowned. Metaphor twisted thrice. Hardly a chart. He smiled despite gloom. Prophets rarely speak plain. Still, dragons came from these cliffs once. Fire leaves marks even time cannot scour. He gestured to the horizon. There, the sky darkens though clouds thin. That swirl is volcanic ash. We sail into the very lungs of the earth. By midday veil thickened to yellow smog. Sailors wrapped scarves soaked in vinegar, eyes watered raw. Drogon launched, beating haze with wings pumped like bellows, carving a corridor of clearer air in his wake. The Carrack followed beneath the slipstream, pitching on unpredictable cross-swells. Then land loomed, if twisted basalt spires could be called land. They jutted like dragon fangs, edges glassy, reflecting sickly light. Between them narrow channels wound inland to lagoons opaque with iridescent film. Even air tasted of pennies. Grey Worm directed anchor drop in a cove half-circled by collapsed colonnades. On a ridge above, ruined villas clung to cliffside, marble facades sloughed like molten wax. Statues of senators and sphinxes lay half-submerged, faces smoothed to featureless masks by centuries of wind-scoured ash. And everywhere protruded bones. Not human alone, but ribs large as ship's spars, skulls horned like the dragons of fresco myth. Missandei shivered though sweat clung to her skin. "No birds," she noted. "No life at all," Yora replied. "Yet something calls them." He meant Drogon, who banked over the ridge and vanished inland with his brothers, as if some beacon beyond mortal sense drew them deeper. A wing beat later, their roars boomed across ravines, not in rage but in echo, like voices answering voices. Yora armed himself. Chainmail, boiled leather brigandine, sword of castle-forged steel still serrated by Qarth's battles. Grey Worm selected 7 unsullied for scouting. They formed column behind, eyes streaming but unblinking. Vinegar rags did little against fumes that weighed air like wet wool. Hovels lined the path. Stone shells where chandeliers of fused glass hung over tables still laid for feast. Skeletons slumped in seats, goblets fused to finger bones. Doom had come so swift even death did not disturb decorum. They climbed a staircase carved into cliff face. Near summit, a terrace opened onto amphitheater of black basalt. At its center a pit yawned, lined with obsidian tiles etched in concentric patterns. Sigils swirling toward a core where a single column of milky crystal rose. Around it coiled stone dragons frozen mid-roar, mauled a tail, each scale razor-sharp. Their carved eyes glimmered red, though no fire burned. Drogon perched atop arena wall, wings mantled. Rhaegal and Viserion crouched flanking the crystal, necks swaying in serpentine rhythm as though entranced. A thrumming vibration emanated from the spire, felt in teeth more than heard. Missandei pressed palm to tile. Not stone, a glass. Indeed, the obsidian floor warmed underfoot, pulsing in time to unseen heartbeats. She traced a rune, Valyrian glyph for bind. Dragon seed, she breathed. These chambers shaped riders. Yora cast lantern light on the central column. Within the milky glass drifted motes of golden flames swirling like captive fireflies. When lantern passed, shadows inside moved independent of his hand, coalescing into three shapes. A woman cloaked in flame, a child with a dragon's wings, and a third form blurred, shifting from man to wolf to star. Then images dissolved, replaced by mirrored faces of the onlookers. Unsullied stiffened. Even Grey Worm's stoic mask cracked fear. Yora stepped closer, ignoring heat that licked boots. As he touched glass, his mind flooded, memory not his own, Daenerys laughing upon windswept plains, Drogon hatching in pyre's glow, a tower of ice taller than any pyramid, snowflakes swirling in violet eyes that were not hers, yet familiar. Voices layered, hers urging, Kaith warning, another deeper, male, sorrowful murmuring of duty. He snatched hand away. The images shattered, fireflies scattering into darkness like embers caught by wind. At that instant the crystal fissured with a crystalline report, and hot sap of milk glass trickled down. Rhaegal hissed, wings raking air, Viserion's breath frosted tile. Drogon reared and unleashed a roar that cracked the amphitheater's lip, dislodging boulders. Yet he did not torch the column, instead he bent head to sniff the escaping vapor, smoke-wreathing nostrils. Missandei cried out, pointing. Beneath the widening crack, a sliver of dark metal protruded, black yet reflecting torchlight in sheens of oil rainbow. Yora pried loose a shard, a horn, broken lengthwise, ridged like dragon's spine, veins of red swirled through onyx body. Runes in silver filigree spiraled around mouthpiece. He traced one, Valyrian for blood, then will. A binding horn, Missandei surmised. Perhaps to command dragonflight. Or to enslave, Yora countered. Memory of Euron Greyjoy's rumored dragon horn chilled him. Such power begs chain. He tucked shard into satchel nonetheless, answers might lie in its craft. Tile beneath feet quaked. Motes of glass rained from rafters. The thrumming grew staccato as a fractured harmony crying pain. Drogon took flight abruptly, launching skyward through hole in roof, scattering carved scales like shrapnel. His brothers followed. Within breaths the amphitheater emptying left silence heavier than thunder. Grey Worm signaled retreat. They scrambled down steps as fissures snaked across terrace. At bay's edge molten gas bubbled in lime pools, vent steam whistled. A statue toppled, fracturing walkway, they dashed aside. Dense acid fog belched from crags, chasing them back toward shore. The Stormcrow's outline emerged through vapor, anchorline taut, hull bucking as under unseen fists. Yora shouted for launch, sailors hauled canvas, oarsmen braced. As last scout leapt aboard, a geyser of flame erupted on inland ridge, no dragon fire but volcanic vent ignited by wind. The earth thundered and section of cliff collapsed, hurling incandescent boulders into surf. One struck half-quarter, timbers exploded. Crew cut anchor lines, sail unfurled. Dragons descended to draw updraft, wings beating hurricane. The carrack lurched seaward, leaving froth streaked with ember. By twilight they cleared smoke belt. Only then did crew count injuries. 2 unsullied seared by falling ash. 1 sailor lost to wave when rock smashed railing. Yet spirits swelled. Survival tasted like wine. Yora retired to cabin, satchel on table. Inside, the horn shard pulsed faint heat. He traced rune lines again. Each touch sent echo of roar through marrow. He understood then why Drogon had not destroyed the relic. It called him, held memory of ancient kin. But memory had voice, not command, half tool, half ghost. Missandei entered quietly. What haunt follows us? She asked. The past, he said. And perhaps future. He poured water on rag and washed ash from her cheeks. We set course home. Home, she echoed. Meereen or beyond? He met her gaze. The dragons yearn for skies unspoiled. I think their home lies west, where wars brew. If Westeros enslaves itself to fear, we must confront fear with flames steered by wisdom, not rage. Her eyes flicked to Horn. Can wisdom bind what grief broke? I do not know. His voice cracked like reef-snagged hull. But I will learn or die. Journey back was harder. Storms dogged them as if gods lashed those who stole from doom. Shrouds ripped, mizzen snapped, rats drowned in bilge water sloshing knee-high. Yet dragons shielded vessel, wrapping wings around mast during worst gales, funneling winds aside. Crew whispered that the ship itself sailed within a dragon's womb. During calm nights Yora studied horn shard. When tapped, it rang no pitched beyond hearing. Dragons twitched on deck, even asleep. He feared blow it and enslave them, so instead he polished runes, mapping their sequence: blood, breath, bond, song. At final spiral, glyph of ice scored through by flame brand. The duality chilled him, dragons forged for war far older than Targaryen conquest. War between fire and ice. Missandei assisted translation. Phrases emerged: when three heads roar as one, the moon will bleed and the world will tremble, and only the singer of songs forged in sorrow may soothe the scales. A singer, not a writer. A leader whose voice soothed grief, not commanded obedience. Yora's callous throat held no such melody. Second week out, as sky cleared, Drogon circled high then streaked west, vanishing beyond horizon. Rhaegal and Viserion followed hours later. Panic-clawed crew. Yora assured them dragons would return, but night fell with deck lanterns casting lonely ovals and no wing beat answered. For 2 days sails drooped slack. On third dawn crow's nest cried out, 3 specks on sun's path, growing until shadow flooded deck. Dragons returned, pelts darkened by soot, talons clutching flayed sea lions, gift or reparation. Grey Worm observed quietly. That evening he approached Yora with straight shoulders. If beasts obey shard, break it, he urged. Freedom is our breath. Chains, death. I will not shackle them, Yora promised. Yet knowledge requires tool. The horn may teach without being used. Grey Worm accepted, though uneasily. They reached Meereen beneath the sunrise of bruised violet. Cleonet greeted them at pier, 20 council members flanking, banners of 9 seats interwoven. Grain fleets sail from Volantis, she reported. But plague racks Astapor, and rumors swirl of armies massing south under flag of a 3-headed dragon green. Illyrio's prince, Yora muttered. He moves faster than ravens. She handed him sealed letter, wax stamped with griffining dragon over chain link circle. The missive invited parley near Selhurries, promising alliance of Targaryen blood. Yora crushed seal in fist. He seeks dragons, he said. But dragons are no dowry. Meereen's streets bustled. Children chased kites shaped like broken manacles. Bakers hawked honey bread. Yet beneath, tension pulsed like veins too close to ruin's surface. Sons of the Harpy scrawled threats on alley walls, Harpy Talon flaying Dragonwing. 2 freed patrols found gutted before treasury. Rhaegal scorched the piazza where killers vanished, leaving stone fused to puddles. For every gesture of justice, resentment sharpened. Qarth appeared again on council balcony as though dusk birthed her. 2 sons of fire strain against leash, she said. One born of grief, one of ambition. Their clash will crack world unless voice of winter binds flames. Winter? Yora asked. The north matters not here. But she only raised gloved finger toward sky where far-off black wings glimmered red in setting sun. Ice rides wind unseen, she whispered, and death marches silent. Mask tilted. Seek the song beneath the wall, Ser Night, or all your fires shall freeze. Before he could question, she faded into gloom. That night he stood alone atop the Grand Pyramid's apex. Dragons roost along ledges, quiet but awake. He lifted the horn shard to starlight. It caught a single crimson star, the bleeding comet of 9 years ago echoing faint memory. Blood and flame. He drew dagger, pricked thumb, let droplet fall upon rune. The shard drank, veins glowing. A single note thrummed, softer than breath, yet dragons cocked heads. Rhaegal drifted closer, inches from shard. Viserion exhaled frost that glazed his armor. Drogon did not move, his red eyes dimmed as though remembering cradle warmth. Yora lowered horn. No slavery, he vowed. Only healing. The thrumming ceased, glow faded, dragons settled. He clenched shard until edges bit. Below, city lights flickered, council session debated embassies to Selhurries and Bravos. Freedmen hammered silver coins bearing new sigil, dragon over broken chain wreathed by 9 stars. Hope coalesced into statehood. Yet beyond horizon, other fires stirred. Volantine triarchs arming galleys to seize Myrrine's harbors in name of trade, Qarth rebuilding warlocks with stolen blue flame, Ireborn raiders capturing slave ships to sell captives anew. And north of the world, beyond wall, wind howled across haunted forest, carrying flakes of first winter snow. In that sound a different horn echoed, deep, mournful, awakening giants of ice. Its call did not reach Yora's ears, but his dreams that night filled with white wings and silence so loud it drowned dragon roar. Weeks turned. Grain ships docked, easing hunger. Cleonet's council ratified codes forbidding bondage for crime or debt. Violators faced dragon judgment, a deterrent swift. Missandei organized schools where children learned sums and letters in half a dozen tongues. Grey Worm drilled a volunteer legion of home guards. Slowly, life sprouted. Yet Yora's restlessness grew. Each dusk he climbed tower to watch sunset paint seas westward. Each dawn he studied ravens' reports. Rumors of wildlings' mass exodus south, of walkers burning blue, of northern lords battered by snows unnatural for summer's edge. The shard pulsed each time he read such lines. One cool night he met Missandei on terrace. "I sail again," he told her. "North through Basilisk Isles, past Stepstones, to Dragonstone, then Wall. If prophecy speaks true, song waits there." She looked at city glowing gold beneath them. "And Myrrine stands. Council holds. Dragons will accompany, they sense pull stronger than my commands." He sighed. "I ask you remain, but choose as your heart wills." Her reply came gentle. "I was slave, now free. I choose service to hope. If hope sails north, so do I." Cleonet accepted command reluctantly but firmly. She pressed scroll into his palm, decree naming her shielder of chains. "Return with voice to gentle monsters," she said. "Or with winter's head on your spear." And so harbors bustled once more. The Stormcrow refitted. A sister ship, Dawn Reaver, joined convoy. 200 freed sailors volunteered. Unsullied companies argued to accompany, but Yora limited guard to 40, leaving garrison strong. Dragons roamed restless, scorching stray sails of merchant cogs that ventured near without tribute. Before departure, Qarth appeared at prow, moonlight glazing lacquered mask. She offered small crystal phial luminous with pale fire. "Drink when wolves howl loudest," she said, "and you will see hearts of flame and snow entwined." Then she vanished as though stepped between breaths. Dawn fluttered pink when sails were hoisted. As ropes strained, Drogon spiraled overhead, his cry echoing off harbor bastions where once harpies leered. Freedmen gathered along quays, chanting wordless hymn that sounded like wings beating. Cleonet raised fist, banners snapped. Stormcrow's prow turned towards Stepstones, gateway to realms where ice and fire had fought since world was young. And upon the wind rode scents of pine forests far north and whispers of names Yora scarcely knew but would soon seek: Bran the Greenseer, Jon Snow the bastard of Winterfell, Arya Swan of Death. The ship cleaved glittering sea, dragons tracking starboard, their reflections wavered rippling gold. Missandei stood beside Yora, gaze fixed on shrinking city. "She would be proud," she whispered. He swallowed, throat aching with unshed tears. "She guides us still," he said, tightening grip on Hornshard. "And when winter meets fire, her dream will find voice again." Overhead, from Regal's throat, a note rose, neither roar nor hiss, but chords seldom heard beyond newborn nest. Viserion answered, higher pitch weaving harmony. Drogon joined last, deeper, older. Across wave-tossed deck the song settled upon ears of crew like strange benediction, stirring hearts and silencing fears. Yora closed eyes, letting it carve hollow in his grief and fill space with purpose. Toward horizon the sun climbed, red as dragon's eye, and the convoy sailed into widening shimmer, three shadows dancing on waves, dark augury or dawning hope none could say. But wind blew steady, and the song of dragons followed, and the world beyond waited, trembling, for balance struck in flame and frost. Wind knifed across the shivering sea, scouring the oak-planked deck of the Stormcrow until every board thrummed like a harp string, and the ship's timbers sang of distant death. Dawn had broken hours ago, but the horizon ahead still smoldered charcoal gray, a smear of winter storm rolling off the northern ice. Yora Mormont tasted snow in the gusts, sharp as the memory of Bear Island's crags, and knew they were nearing lands that had never bent a knee to drag on fire. Beside him on the forecastle Missandei pulled her wool cloak tight, frost jeweled the curls that framed her face like brittle pearl. The convoy had dwindled to 2 ships, the Stormcrow, her patched sails now crusted white, and the slighter Dawn Reaver, riding the seas astern with half her canvas reefed. Sleety wind had stripped the colors from their banners weeks past, yet the crew had refused to lower the rags. They flapped now as ghost pennons, tattered silhouettes of broken chains and three-headed dragons that cracked like whips when gales whipped across the spars. Overhead, Drogon wheeled against iron sky, his wings shedding sheaths of rime with every thunderous beat. Regal cruised lower, pacing the ship in lazy arcs, while Viserion vanished and reappeared through clouds, scattering showers of crystallized vapor. No matter the weather, the dragons kept station, silent shadows tracking the vessel as though some invisible tether bound them to Yora's oath. The charts stolen from Qarthine galleymasters were useless now. Beyond the Braavosi headlands, no cartographer dared claim these seas. The last landmark, a jagged carrion island known to smugglers as Talon Rock, had dropped astern 3 days earlier, swallowed by squalls. Since then they had sailed by instinct, following the draw the Hornshard muttered in Yora's belt pouch. Whenever uncertainty gnawed, he took the splintered relic in one gloved hand and felt it pulse, warm as heart blood, pulling them ever north by west toward a destiny he could neither name nor refuse. Grey Worm approached up the companionway, helm under arm, white flecks peppering his shorn head. "Raven, sir," he said, extending a bone tube sealed with red wax pinched in the shape of twin dire wolves. Yora cracked the seal, unrolled the parchment, and read while rigging groaned overhead. To the one who rides with dragons, it began in a cramped, hurried script. "I am Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. If this reaches you, know that the wall is imperiled by foes older than recorded song. We have witnessed dead things walk, led by shadows in armor of frost. The defense of the realms of men now hangs by a thread. We require aid, steel, fire, anything your winged beasts may offer. Come with all haste to Eastwatch by the sea. Time is a sword at our throats." It was signed in the same hurried hand, beneath which an uncertain maester's mark attested truth. Yora folded the scrap, staring across slate waves. Jon Snow, bastard nephew he'd never met, commander of Black Brothers he once scorned. A child grown to manhood while Yora languished in exile's shame. And now the boy begged succor from dragons. Missandei read the letter, lips forming the words as her breath smoked the air. "If shadows walk," she murmured. Then Kaith's warning was more than riddle. Grey Worm lifted gaze to Drogon carving a path through low clouds. "Fire is answer to cold," he said in his rasped common. "But fire must be guided." "Aye," Yora replied. He turned aft where sailors tightened lines as sleet hardened to hail. "Signal Dawn Reaver. Hard north to Eastwatch." He raised voice to quarterdeck. "Helm, bring her 2 points larboard. Make what sail she'll carry." Canvas cracked like thunder as crew obeyed. The hull groaned, protesting new angle of wind. Yet the storm crow surged forward, her prow cleaving foam like winter wolf through drifted snow. 2 days later the first bergs appeared, silent mountains adrift, their blue-white faces looming from fog like the frozen tusks of leviathans. Between them the sea churned kelp and shards of black ice that rasped beneath the keel. Lookouts armed with pikes stood watch for floes that might stove the bow. Twice Drogon scorched a rogue slab to mist when it threatened to shear their flank. Though relief flickered through the crew each time flame roared, fear soon followed. No mortal engine could match such heat, and what mortal hand could quell it should rage turn unbridled. Night fell early at that latitude, darkness creeping up at mid-afternoon. Under new moon the world became graphite lines and glints of starlit ice, until the dragons lit the sky, a regal's emerald tongue flickering across cloud tops, Viserion weaving ribbons of pale frost fire, and Drogon riding highest, exhaling ruddy sparks that swarmed about his jaws like a swarm of fireflies. Below decks men whispered of omens, they burned the sky to keep the dark away. Others answered, no, they guide the dead to us like torch to moth. Yora heard the murmur, felt the brittle dread, yet dared no mollycoddling. Instead, he walked the companionways with Hornshard clutched in pocket, its pulse now steady as his heartbeat, mirroring the thud in his ears. On the 5th night, shrieks split the gloom, human carried on hollow wind. The lookout lantern swung, catching shapes adrift off starboard, half-sunken fishing skiff, mast sheared, hull canted. Bodies clung to gunwale, waving feebly. Yora ordered boats lowered. Grey Worm led 6 unsullied across veiled water and returned with 3 survivors, 2 men gray-faced, teeth chattering, and a girl maybe 12, cloaked in sealskin too large for her thin shoulders. They spoke the guttural dialect of Skagos. Missandei coaxed words from them slowly. Undead had swept their hamlet on mainland coast 10 leagues south of Har Home, killing livestock, raising corpses to fight kin. Those who fled by water saw ice-armored riders driving a host across tidal flats. Pale giants, white still in shackles, even women and babes stiff with death yet screaming in soundless throats. The girl's eyes were round with terror. She whispered of a horn blast deep as the earth that froze blood mid-vein. 3 times it blew, she said. Then the world went silent. Yora felt shard flare hot at mention of horns. He sent the refugees below for broth and blankets, but their tale lingered like specter breath. Jon's letter seemed suddenly mild beside this living dread. Fire alone might not suffice. The following dawn broke clear, sky shaved diamond blue. A wall of white rose on horizon, stretching end to end like the spine of a sleeping god, the wall, carved from ice thousands of feet thick. Even at 10 leagues distance its shadow climbed clouds. Eastwatch by the sea crouched at its foot, a crooked warren of timber towers and stone keeps leaning out over frigid surf. Smoke smudged the air above black chimneys, but within that haze something darker coiled. Column of soot rising unnaturally straight before dispersing. Fire no hearth could birth. Bugles sounded from the ramparts as dragons descended. Black cloaks lined battlements, crossbows aimed in trembling hands. Yora raised arms from the bowrail, shouting downwind. A horn smaller than the one of legend but deep answered thrice. Gates creaked open on rusted hinges. The Stormcrow felt for depth, anchored half a furlong out, and longboats ferried them to quay slicked with ice. Jon Snow met them at Pier's End, cloak of ragged wolf fur whipping sideways. Gray shot his beard now, though he could not be more than 5 and 20, the weight of command added shadow to his gaze. He clasped Yora's forearm in soldier's greeting. Lord Commander, Yora began awkwardly. Ser Yora. Jon's voice rasped, bearing nights without sleep. I knew your father. He spoke of you often fondly despite grief. A glance rose to Drogon perched on watchtower roof, talons carving stone. His stories never included that. There is much about exile that never reached Bear Island, Yora answered. But time pressed, introductions could wait. You said the wall is imperiled. Show me. They crossed frost-sheathed yard to an inner garrison ringed by torches wrought from iron baskets. Within, a corpse lay chained to trestle, gray skin drawn parchment tight, eyes black pits. As Yora stepped near, the thing hissed, teeth snapping. Blue-black frost rhymed its grave loaths. Jon drew a dragonglass dagger and slammed it under the collarbone. Screech split the room, flesh cracked, then crumbled to dust. Silence followed, thick as snowdrifts. That came from a party 2 days past, Jon said. A single white among 3 rangers. The other 2 never made it back. The one you saw was once my steward. Missandei's knuckles whitened round cloak clasp. Grey Worm's eyes narrowed, measuring thread against blade. You have dragonglass, Yora noted. But not enough. Nor enough hands, Jon admitted. The watch is a ragged shadow now. But the dead gather beyond the frost fangs. My scouts saw their columns 5,000 at least, maybe more. When they move, they will sweep around the wall's end where ice meets sea. Eastwatch will fall first. If the gate falls, lands south are open road. Outside, wind banged shutters like restless ghosts. Yora considered map spread beneath guttering candle. He marked arrowheads, dead troops arrayed along coastline, pinning pockets of wildling refugees. How much time? Days, Jon said. A week if we're blessed. Drogon's roar rumbled overhead, rattling rafters. Yora closed eyes, sensing shard throb. Then we use every hour. Plans unfurled like war banners, castles along eastern stretch of wall summoned their full garrisons, what few men they could spare. Wildlings camped in ragged tents were armed with rusting iron, dragonglass blades were doled out in lieu of thanks. Snow and Tormund Giant's Bane stalked trenches dug at tide's mark, instructing free folk to fell pines for palisades. Missandei organized soup lines. The Skagos survivors guided gleaning parties to kelp beds when stores ran low. Dragons patrolled sky, casting vast silhouettes over frozen surf. At Yora's instruction, they burned dead trees along Approach Valley, clearing kill zones that would soon flood with whites. Regal's emerald fire fused snow to slick obsidian crust, forcing the enemy into narrow lanes. Viserion's frost breath erected knife ridge barricades that even corpses would struggle to climb. Drogon incinerated ice flows near Sea Gate, forcing undead to march inland, funneling them toward choke points measured by ranger engineers. Through every waking hour, Shard tugged at Yora's chest, urging deeper resonance. He studied at nights by meager candle, tracing glyphs until they glimmered faint red. Dragons rumbled outside keep walls each time as though attending secret council. Yet he dared not sound it, not in fortress where frightened men already perched on precipice of mutiny should flame misfire. On the fourth evening, white clouds bruised plum, snow drifted queer, swirling against wind. Raven horns sounded thrice from watchtower. Men scrambled to battlements, a rider approached from North Valley, horse-lathered, bearing banner of flayed man quartered in red. A Bolton? Yora muttered, dread stirring. But the rider proved a lean youth, cheeks raw, cloak stitched with heart tree leaves, a Northman sworn to House Karstark. He knelt before Jon in courtyard. My lord, he gasped, Winterfell stands besieged. Ramsay Bolton dead by arrow, but Karstark's waver. Stark banner men rally under Lady Sansa to defend, yet numbers fail. Word rides that dead things mass south of Last River. Without aid, Winterfell falls. Jon's face paled. He looked to Yora. If Winterfell falls, the north fractures, he said, and the dead sweep south unopposed. We cannot divide strength, Yora replied, but we can divide fire. He lifted gaze to Drogon's circling dusk sky. The black will fly to Winterfell at once. Rhaegal remains here, Viserion covers the gap should either falter. Alone? Jon frowned. Can you guide him that far unaided? I can try, Yora answered. Pull of shard would serve. Missandei stepped forward. Take me, she said. Dragons know my voice too. And I speak tongues south, Lady Sansa may trust message borne by councilwoman, not warrior alone. Reluctance wrenched Yora's heart, yet he nodded. Tom allowed no sentiment. Preparations were swift. Yora cinched leather harness across Drogon's shoulders, loops braided from Myreen's silk and ship-rigging cable. Missandei secured herself behind him, cloak bound at throat, hands clasped around his waist. Bolts of dragonglass-tipped arrows were fastened to saddle quiver. Across his back he slung Ser Gior's long sword, gifted by Jon in steel of old bear. Drogon pawed ice, wings flexing. Shard pulsed in Yora's gauntlet. He pressed it to Dragon's scale at nape neck. Low hum resonated. Drogon stilled, head snapping toward west as though horizons whispered. Yora drew breath, shouted ancient Valyrian phrase taught by crumbling scroll. Sovs Vezov, fly fury. With convulsive surge, Drogon launched, wind shear ripping screams from watchtower flag. They rose through mauve twilight until Eastwatch became pinprick of torchlight against snaking wall. Frost stung cheeks. Missandei's arms tightened. Drogon beat wings, arrowing across white wilderness. Following line of Kingsroad glimpsed beneath snow like faint scar. Below, columns of dead shuffled through drifts. A tide of gray limbs around ragged standards of ice. Blue eyes glimmered stark-cold in Drogon's shadow, but none looked skyward. Hunger fixed them on beating hearts south. Drogon loosed stream of hellish red, corpses ignited, flailing before collapsing into pools of ash that hissed into steam. Yet tied behind pressed on, indifferent. Hours blended, constellations wheeled. At last Winterfell's towers broke horizon, flares burning on ramparts, arrows streaking night. South fields erupted in patches where campfires had been quenched by snow. Horns wailed. Siege engines groaned. The armies of Bolton and Karstark ringed the castle with mantlets of spiked logs, while from north approached the dead poured like locusts. Drogon banked over great hall's collapsed roof. Snow-cloaked archers took aim, hesitated, then lowered bows as black silhouette filled moon. Yora steered for Inner Bailey, talons smashed flagstones as Dragon landed, sending guards sprawling. Sansa Stark emerged from postern door, red hair ice-stiff, wearing mail over quilted gown. Recognition flickered, of bear sigil perhaps, or the dragons she once heard sung. Missandei dismounted and spoke quickly, words wreathing vapor in frozen air. Within an hour, war council gathered in crypts below. Heaps of dragonglass were doled, ravens dispatched to scattered holds. Sansa accepted alliance, though doubt flickered when dragon roars shook stone overhead. But outside the walls death closed. Corpses scaled berms discarded by Boltons, surging alongside living Karstark spearmen whose loyalty fractured when flayed banners fell. Yora mounted Drogon again, rose into sky now lit by aurora of sickly green. He unleashed fire in radial sweeps, cutting swaths through both living and dead. Flames devoured mantlets, cooking men alive beneath shields. The living broke, scattering across snowy fields. Yet from the woods emerged figures taller than men, plated in ice steel. One raised spear of pale crystal and hurled it with impossible force. It sang across sky and struck Drogon's right wing where membrane thinned. Impact boomed. Drogon shrieked, banked hard. Yora felt rigging snap somewhere aft. Missandei pitched sideways, but his arm lashed round her waist. Blood, molten black, spattered across snow as shards of frozen scale fluttered down like broken obsidian leaves. They managed rough landing inside walls, skidding through smithy yard and crushing carts. Maesters rushed, though what salve for Dragon's wound none knew. Drogon curled, exhaling steam, eyes molten gold narrowed in pain. Yora slid from saddle, heart hammering. Wound wept Tarthic ichor. He cut cloak into strips, pressed cloth against seeping gash, but fluid ate fibers like acid. Above battlements, wights amassed. Sansa commanded archers to focus on giants hammering gate, but numbers swelled. Missandei knelt beside shard that had fallen from Yora's sash during descent. It flickered, runes pulsing like heartbeat. "Sound it," she whispered. He stared. The thought of enslaving dragons sickened him, yet grievous wound demanded answer stronger than bandage. He lifted shard, felt it vibrate. Drogon's pupils dilated, fixing on relic. Other dragons were leagues away, Regal at Eastwatch, Viserion patrolling coast, yet he sensed them across tether. Yora brought shard to lips, hesitation suspended as thunder rattled gate hinges. He blew. Sound burst not through ears but bones, note low as tectonic shift, echoing across stones of Winterfell like the roar of ancient forge. He tasted blood, lips split against jagged mouthpiece. Drogon arched, wings flaring despite injury, and a wave of heat rippled outward, melting nearby snow to steam. On ramparts the dead arrested mid-climb, blue eyes dimmed, flickering. Giants moaned as if horns within their skulls answered call. Crystal spearman on ridge turned, helm of frozen flame tilting. Yora watched Dragon's wound draw fresh gush, but edges already clotted as though molten blood seared gash shut. Drogon rose slowly, pain heavy yet enraged. It thundered again. Above, Aurora shivered, colors bleeding. The note lingered, swirling through night, weaving into wolf's howls rising across Wolfswood. Across 100 leagues, at Eastwatch, Regal lifted head, booming answer, and Viserion wheeled seaward releasing pillar of frost fire. Birds burst from trees along coast, ravens cried. Inside Winterfell yard, shard dimmed. Yora lowered it, breath ragged. Drogon's eyes cleared, still blazing fury but leashed to rider's will, or bond deeper. He bared teeth, smoke wafting. Wights at gate shrieked anew, scrabbling as if repelled by unseen wall. Giants stumbled, beat heads with frozen fists. Stark soldiers cheered, raining dragoglass arrows into chaos. Flame catapults launched fire pots, setting corpses aflame faster than frost could snuff. Yet open field outside teemed. From massive undead stepped figure crowned in spires of ice, the Night King. He raised both hands slow. Snow lifted swirling, coalescing into blizzard shield that snuffed torches, blinded archers. Another spear manifested, crystalline edges catching aurora gleam. He cocked arm. Drogon bellowed challenge and leapt skyward as spear came. It tore through swirling snow, missing by yards, crashing into gargoyle of first keep that exploded under impact. Rubble rained on yard. The Night King lowered hand, expression unreadable. Yora steered Drogon in towering ascent, wingbeats launching off rising thermals conjured by own fire. Above murk, starlight blazed. He glanced down. Yard full of wounded, Sansa rallying men, Missandei retrieving shard, pocketing it beneath cloak as though it were heart she kept safe. Now he faced choice, harry undead host alone and risk dragon wounded, or return to Eastwatch, regroup with other dragons and Night's Watch forces. Drogon veered east instinctively, perhaps hearing his brother's distant songs. Yora allowed it, Winterfell held for moment, but tide would return. Battle for World's Dawn would be fought where ice first meets fire, the wall. They soared over Frostfang peaks. Behind them Winterfell's walls dwindled, torches glittering like dying embers. Dawn-rimmed sky as line of false wolves crept along horizon. Ice wights tracking them. Spearbearer's silhouette melted into distance, but shadow of his malice rode wind. At Eastwatch ruin awaited. Before they sighted fortress, smoke plume rose, black, roiling. Regal's mournful cry reached Drogon's ears. He answer. Ed with roar thick with anguish. They banked, plunging through cloud breaks to view devastation. Southern curtain wall gaped, scorched ice slag, inner keep's roof caved. But port tower still stood, and along parapet figures in black fought amid corpse storm. Viserion strafed outer field with frost breath, shards glittering blue. Yora guided Drogon into yard half collapsed. Regal perched atop broken ballista, panting, scales scored by arrows of transparent crystal. Jon Snow hobbled across rubble, sword of steel black with frozen gore. One arm hung limp, splinted at wrist. They came before dawn, he said through cracked lips, voice ragged. Giants breached wall section out past the gate. We drove them back with Dragonflame, but we're spent. Grey Worm, soot-streaked, helped Missandei from rampart steps. She ran to Yora, tear tracks carving filth. Frost Giants lifted slabs of the wall like rotten ice, she gasped. Only fire turned them, Regals. But each time he spewed flame, spearmen hurled shards of glass that cut him. Eastwatch can't hold another assault. Jon wiped blood from beard. Night King rides for us. You bought Winterfell time, but he means to break wall now. We must kill him or fall. Kill Ice God. Yora clenched shard until rune edges bit palm. A vision flickered, glyph of ice scored by flame brand. Blood, breath, bond, song, and ice cleft by fire. The singer forged in sorrow. Was that him? Or another? He met Jon's eyes. They were dark as frozen ponds, yet within burned embers of dire resolve. A leader who had died once already, if rumor whispered true. A man tempered by loss beyond ordinary ken. Singer forged in sorrow indeed. Dragon's answer song, Yora said softly. He pressed shard into Jon's gloved hand. Blow it. Fear flickered. You trust me with this? Trust is all we have. Yora gestured to dragons circling overhead. They know my voice, but you bear stark blood, wolf's heart. Fire needs ice to temper rage. Sound the horn when Night King shows, guide their flame to heart of winter. Jon hefted shard, ice tracing runes. Around them the yard quaked as distant drums signaled undead muster. Missandei touched Yora's wrist, silent plea to live. He answered with clasp, then climbed Drogon once more. Lines formed upon shattered ramparts, unsullied ranks shoulder to shoulder with black-cloaked brothers, wildlings gripping spears of dragoglass, free folk mothers with sling stones wrapped in burning pitch. Farfield erupted as columns of dead emerged from snow haze, endless, many-eyed. At their fore rode Night King astride skeletal stallion, crown of rime spires gleaming. He halted beyond bowshot, raised hand. Blizzard blossomed behind, spiraling. Silence drowned world. On rampart Jon lifted horn shard. Breath steamed. He placed it to lips blue. The sound was thunderborn within earth's marrow, note both mournful and defiant, vibrating teeth, bones, soul. Dragons answered as one. Drogon's roar split sky. Regal's echo braided. Viserions' frost shriek harmonized. Flame ignited along wound in Drogon's wing, cauterizing. Regal's eyes kindled brighter than emeralds. Viserion's white scales shimmered auroral. Night King turned face upward. For first time, Yora thought he saw surprise flicker in rime blue gaze. Drogon dove. Regal flanked left. Viserion right. Triad speared through low cloud, descending in corkscrew of flame and frost. Horns pulse synchronized. They moved as single beast with three throats. Drogon exhaled torrent of ruby fire. Regal layered emerald. Viserion unleashed blizzard core. The streams twined, forging spiral of white-hot plasma, carving through whites like scythe through chaff, boring path to Night King's mount. He raised hand, wall of ice surged, shattered under prismatic fire. He hurled spear. Drogon rolled. Shaft grazed flank, sloughing scale but missing vital tissue. Next moment Triflame struck him square. For heartbeat ice mailed figure stood within inferno, crystalline armor glowing orange. Then cracks webbed, spidering. Crown spires melted, flowing like molten glass. Night King screamed, a sound like glaciers rending, and burst. Shockwave of frost pulsed outward, igniting whites in azure flame that imploded, leaving only drifting snow ash. Silence fell, broken by clatter of bones as corpses without will collapsed. Giants froze mid-stride, becoming statues that toppled and shattered. Across horizon undead host disintegrated, a chain unlinked from master. Upon walls men stared, unbelieving. Then cheers erupted, a roar to rival dragons, rolling across ice fields. Yora guided Drogon to tower top. Jon awaited, horns still smoking. They met gaze, no words. Missandei reached parapet, tears frozen to smile. Grey Worm thrust broken spear skyward. Unsullied beat shields. Wildlings howled like wolves freed. But Yora felt shard cool, rune pulses slowing. Crystal crumbled along fracture lines, purpose fulfilled. He set it on parapet, it split, pieces falling into gulf below. Dragons circled, but now their song was softer, a lullaby to hush tempests. Fire still burned, yet tempered by victory shared with mortal hearts. Spring came late to north that year, but come it did. Snows receded, revealing carnage thawing into earth. Eastwatch's breach was sealed with fused ice, regal melted, and Viserion refroze. Men joked the patch would outlast Wall itself. Word of Night King's fall flew south on raven wings. At Winterfell, Sansa lit pyres for dead Karstark and Stark alike. Ramsay's banners were fed to flames. From Vale and Riverland's envoys arrived, offering fealty to House Reborn. Among them rode Cleonet of Meereen, bearing scrolls of alliance between free cities of Slavers Bay and Northmen. She knelt before Jon and Sansa at ancient hearth, promised grain fleets when next moon turned. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister snarled at news of dragons north. She ordered scorpions forged in dozen, but dreams of wildfire in Red Keep kept her sleepless. Across Narrow Sea, Illyrio's false prince reconsidered voyages when three-headed fire consumed Winter Devil. Yora roamed Wall's battlements at dusk, bone amulet, her bone, resting warm above heart. Missandei walked with him, scarves fluttering in kinder breeze. Below, dragons rested on cliffs, wings spread to sun now weak but golden. When she asked what next, he answered honest, dreams live in more than one heart now. I will guide theirs until song needs no singer. She braided her fingers through his. And when burden lifts? We fly, he said, gaze drifting to horizon where sea met sky in endless blue. Not as conquerors, but as memory of queen who broke chains and became dawn. High above, Drogon raised head, nostrils flaring its scent of budding pine. Regal rustled wings, Viserion chirred soft. In their throats a new song rumbled, no longer grief's lament, but promise set to music of thaw. Yora closed eyes, hearing it echo across vastness. Fire remembering ice, ice honoring fire. Balance wrought in sorrow, tempered by courage, carried on wings of flame into futures unwritten. And far below, through cracks of melting snow, green shoots push towards sun, fragile yet unyielding, first heralds of a world reforged in the crucible of dragons and men, bound by horn note now dispersed into silent starlight, yet forever resonant in the pulse of earth itself. The wall's patched breach glittered in the noon sun like a scar of blue diamond glass, and beneath that blinding seam the yard had become a carpenter's hive. Saws rasped, hammers rang, and the mingled smells of fresh-cut pine, boiling pitch, and horse sweat thickened the air. Children of the free folk lugged wicker baskets of dragaglass arrowheads to the Fletcher's benches. Blacksmiths from Wintertown quenched glowing axe blades in brine barrels, steam seething up like ghosts driven from the iron. Any stranger might have mistaken it for a scene of humble industry, save for the three dragons perched on the ruined watchtowers, their folded wings bigger than the mainsails of great Iberian carracks, and their eyes fixed, each in turn, on the half-finished siege engines aligned beyond the gate. Jorah Mormont moved through it all with the slow, deliberate step of a man reacquainting himself with gravity. He had not slept since the horn shattered and the Night King fell. Even seated, rest eluded him. Too many voices demanded counsel, too many loose threads dangled over crevasses no mortal hand could bridge. An Ireborn envoy arrived that morning bearing an offer of hostages and grain in exchange for permission to reeve across the arbor. Jon Snow dispatched him south with a curt refusal. 5 ravens fluttered in from the airy, white harbor, the twins, the Bar-Rollins, each sealed with different sigils but all begging some slice of the dragon's favor. Dawn's chill still lingered on the stones, yet the world's courts and keeps already tugged at their wings like children clutching a mother's hem. He entered the east granary, ducking beneath a lintel charred black by dragon flame. Inside, rows of bunks housed the wounded. Rangers whose limbs were bound in linen stiff with frozen blood, wildling spearmen propped upright with splints, a Karstark bannerman staring at his own cauterized stump with the hollow calm of men who have passed through one pain too many. Maester Hammond worked between the cots, a portly man whose chain rattled with every step. His breath puffed in little clouds as he inspected bandages, murmured comfort, and shooed away ravens that tried to peck stray crumbs from the straw flooring. Missandei knelt beside a Stark archer whose face was hidden beneath layers of cloth. She dipped a rag in a kettle of steaming pine resin infusion and dabbed gently at frostbite-purple cheeks. The scent of spruce needles floated above sharper odors of sweat and tallow. When she saw Jorah, she rose, wiping palms on her skirts. Her eyes were ringed with gray exhaustion, but they brightened a touch. "He will keep his nose," she whispered, "if the rot stays above the cartilage." Jorah snorted softly. Northmen would sooner lose half their heads than complain of cold. Half his face is numb. He cannot complain. She smoothed the archer's blankets, then gestured toward the granary's rear door. Jon waits by the shore. He wishes to speak before the next council. They passed between the cots, out the back, and along a sloping path of crushed shell and snow that descended to Eastwatch's narrow beach. Waves lapped sluggishly against gray stones crusted with slush where salt spray hit ice and refroze. Jon Snow stood on a rocky outcrop below the tower's shadow, the tattered stark colors on his cloak snapping in the stiff wind. He held the shattered shard of Dragonhorn's mouthpiece, turning it in his calloused fingers as though uncertain whether it were relic or weapon. "It sings no more," he said when they approached. "No pulse, no heat, nothing." Yora folded gloved hands behind his back. "Its task is done. Perhaps." Jon's gaze remained fixed on the fragment. "Or perhaps it waits for a new song." He tossed it high. Sunlight glimmered crimson in the fissured veins before he caught it again, hard, as if seizing resolve. Word came from Deepwoodmont. Another host was spotted beyond the shivering forest 3 days ago. Smaller than the Night Kings, but still thousands. Missandei frowned. Without their master, will they not simply drift apart? "They follow another," Jon said. "Tormund's ravens claim a figure cloaked head to toe in weirwood bark, white as snow, eyes shining faint as moonlight." He glanced up at the wall's towering face, the fused patch gleaming like opal. No spear of ice this time. It let the giants batter a crack, then walked through the breach. "Tormund believes it seeks something buried south of Greywater Watch." Yora exhaled a plume of steam. "We should ride at once." Jon nodded. "Before we do, we must settle the dragon's fates." Drogon, as if hearing his name carried on wind, loosed a rumble from the tower top. Rhaegal answered with an echoing bellow. Viserion only cocked his head, the ice-dusted crown of horns catching sunlight in subtle blue flares. "They are healing," Missandei said. "Drogon's wingskin mends. Rhaegal's arrow wounds crust in new scale." "Good." Jon tucked the horn fragment into a leather pouch hanging at his belt. "Because we'll need them when we march." "But after we save the north, what then?" His eyes, dark as forest soil, settled on Yora. "Dragonstone's mines crawl with obsidian. King's Landing still sits the Iron Throne. Daenerys claimed it by right of fire and blood. Will we?" Yora looked back to where the keep's high tower cast a long spear of shadow across the yard, where the flag of broken chains fluttered beside the direwolf and the watch's black banner. "The Iron Throne," he said quietly. "I have not thought on it since Qarth." The memory stabbed like frosted steel. He pushed it aside. That chair brought doom to every soul who sat it. Blood-drenched wood, metal, city, continent. Missandei touched her throat where the Myrinese scarred iron chafed long ago. Daenerys wished for a world without slaves, not merely a different crown. Jon kicked a bit of ice off the stone. "But you cannot change the realm without planting your banner in the Red Keep or burning it down." "Burning," Yora muttered, "has its appeal." The sea boomed against breakwater. Gulls wheeled overhead. Jon folded arms. "If we leave Westeros to tear itself apart while we nurse the north, all we saved will drown in another war. We need allies and order. The Vale stands with us. The Tullus crave peace. And Sam Tarly, Maester Sam, has proof hidden in Old Town that Rhaegar's marriage to Lyanna was lawful. That makes me legitimate heir," Yora finished. "Aye. The High Gardener would rally what remains of Reach if I wed his daughter. Dorne is leaderless, but the little princess listens. Yet I have neither time nor men to press claim." "You have dragons," Missandei said. "Dragons," Jon repeated, voice flat. "Will they serve me as they serve you?" Drogon locked gaze with Jon from his perch and huffed a plume of smoke. Yora felt the echo of hornsong flutter faintly in his ribcage, dormant but not dead. He squared shoulders. "They serve no one. They choose. When the shard sounded, they chose to answer you. Perhaps that is sign enough." Jon's lips pressed thin. Signs feel thin when ghosts still walk. An iron bell clanged from the ramparts, 3 slow peals, council in the yard. Jon gave the sea a last wary glance, then strode up the path. The council convened in the shadow of the breached curtain. Snowdrifts within had been flattened into benches fashioned from half-burned wagons, planks still charred. Atop a dais of cauldrons turned upside down sat Sansa Stark, queen in the north in all but coronation, her cloak of white fox trimmed with bloody wolf. To her right stood Cleonet, flanked by 2 spear-bearing free women wearing the braided cords of Myreen's civic guard. To her left towered Grey Worm, helm under arm, face as impassive as granite. Gendry Baratheon, broad-shouldered in heavy smith's leather, hammered a new dragonglass maul handle while listening. Davos Seaworth lingered behind Jon, fingers worrying a pouch that once held onions. When they had all gathered, Jon raised both hands. The long night shatters in pieces, but still it lingers. A new White Walker commands what dead remain. Eastwatch stands. Winterfell stands. Now we march to shatter the last spear before spring can bloom. The free cities have promised ships of grain and healing herbs, if we survive to claim them. Sansa leaned forward. Deepwood's raven begs for succor. The Karstarks who remain loyal are encircled at the last river ford. If it falls, we lose our western flank and the harvest sellers of Torgon Square. Cleonet unfurled a silk map streaked with inked arrows. Meereen's grain fleet turns the Cape of Storms 2 moons hence. We cannot feed Northmen till then, but we can feed an army on saltcod, lichens, and hope. Salt and lichens do not fill a child's belly, Davos muttered. Gendry set his hammer down with a clang and crossed arms. I can forge longer scythe blades for scorpions, but only if we quarry iron from Skagos, and those bays still freeze nightly. Then we break the ice, Yora said. All faces turned to him. Rhaegal and Viserion fly north with a company to Deepwood. Torch the flows, open the strait. Drogon will bear Jon south to rally the Karstarks. Cleonet leads a vanguard of Unsullied on over-ice march, securing fords. Grey Worm looked toward Jon. If Walker seeks something at Greywater, we strike first. Marshlands are weak ground for dragons, but perfect for spears. Sansa touched frost-rimed map. And Winterfell? We cannot leave it naked. I stay, Missandei, I said. With the wounded, and with archers who can still draw strings. If the foe turns, ravens will fly. A hush settled. Decisions wove themselves from necessity. Jon rose. We ride at dusk, he said. The new moon is 2 nights off. We attack beneath its darkness and burn what dead remain. Sansa clasped his wrist. Guard your life, brother. He smiled, a brief, brittle curve. Death and I have danced before. Dusk bled crimson over the shivering sea. Yora saddled Drogon in the wide courtyard once filled with refuse, now icicles dripped from eaves like glass teeth. Jon approached, gauntlets and gorget reflecting dragon fire orange. He had shaved the day's stubble, revealing the boy he once was, but lines of grief cut deeper than any soot. Ready? Yora asked. Jon glanced toward the tower where Rhaegal spread green wings, Grey Worm mounting behind Cleonet on the saddle. As any man can be. You survived death itself, Yora said. You'll survive this ride. Jon snorted. I'd sooner face death again than your black beast's temper. They climbed the rigging. Drogon shifted, testing weight, but allowed Jon to sit behind Yora. Missandei kissed Yora's gauntlet, squeezed Jon's boot with small fingers. Return alive, she whispered. Alive, Yora vowed, though wind tore the word away. With a thunderclap of muscle and air, Drogon launched. Below, Rhaegal and Viserion rose in tandem, unsullied gripping harness rings. A roar like rent mountains howled across ruined courtyard. On rampart, children stared upward, their frost-nipped faces lit by the dragons' bellies of flame. They flew west first, skimming the ice-blue teeth of the Bay of Seals, then Drogon banked south along snow-laden King's Road. Storm clouds marched overhead, but the dragon's heat carved tunnels of clear air. Jon shouted over wind, when Daenerys died, did you feel her pass? Yora's throat thickened. I felt the world bend as if a star fell and cracked the sky. I felt nothing whole since. He paused, then, if she sees us now, I pray she is pleased. Jon's gloved hand found the ragged crest of scale behind Yora's saddle. She is proud, he said softly. Ahead, Last River wound beneath crusted ice. Firelight flickered along its banks, Karstark war camp, ringed by spiked ditches and wooden ramparts. Beyond, fields glittered with white forms, thousands of corpses trudging through knee-deep snow led by half-withered warriors whose armor wept rime. At their center strode the bark-armored White Walker, tall as a hodder and twice as thin, crowned by branches of frozen weirwood. Drogon speared into a dive. Yora braced, knees clamped around saddle horns. At 200 feet he shouted Dracarys. The dragon's chest convulsed, a torrent of red gold flame jetted forth, sweeping across undead ranks. Snow. W flash sublimed, erupting in clouds of steam, the front rank of whites exploded into shards of bone and ash. Rhaegal thundered in from the flank, seam of green incineration splitting the mass. Viserion's frost breath struck the White Walker, crusting its weirwood armor in glassy glazes. But branch-crowned horror raised hands, frost rippled outward, quenching flame, reassembling bone already charred. Drogon banked hard, a narrow spear of petrified wood hurled from Walker's palm whistled past Jon's ear, missing by inches. It struck frozen ground behind them, sprouting into twisting vine roots that coiled hungrily around charred white fragments, knitting them anew. "You're accursed. It sows death." Jon stood in stirrups, unsheathed sword. The blade's steel rippled with smoky striations, the Valyrian steel of House Mormont, the one that father gave to him. "Aim me at its heart," he barked. "You'll be a dart in snowstorm," Yora warned. "Then cast me well." They circled again. Unsullied on Regal's back hurled dragoglass javelins, pinning giants in place, Cleonet loosed arrows that burned green where they struck. Viserion strafed back line, freezing rivers of undead so they shattered under pressure of their own rank. Still the walker advanced. Drogon soared high, inverted, then plunged in near vertical stoop. Jon steadied on saddle's lip, Yora tilted shoulder. At 30 feet he released reins. Jon leapt. He fell through swirling sparks and motes of hoarfrost, sword two-handed overhead. The walker looked up, frost-rimmed eyes widening. Jon struck like meteoric iron. Valyrian steel met weirwood flesh with shriek like split granite. Blade cut through torso. The walker's cry fractured the air, pain and fury. Gray sap burst from wound, freezing mid-spray into needle shards. Jon rolled, tumbling into snow, ribs bruised. The creature staggered. Fissures spiderwebbed across bark armor. It reached for Jon, but he drove sword tip through throat. Light flashed within chest cavity, blue-white star imploding. Walker shattered into splinters that sizzled where they fell. A noise like whines through long-dead pines sighed across battlefield. Whites convulsed and collapsed, strings severed. Silence followed, broken only by shrill keening of winter wind. Karstark survivors on rampart erupted in cheers. Fire pots hurled moments earlier now guttered harmlessly in corpse heaps. Drogon landed amid smoldering snow, shoulder wound weeping fluid but wings strong. Yora vaulted down, found Jon already rising, fist to chest though blood ran down brow. "It's done," Jon panted. "For now," Yora said. Steam curled from dragon's nostrils, mingling with men's breath. The last White Walker died a day later, felled by Grey Worm's spear as Regal pinned it against tall pine north of Flint Cliffs. There were no more. The dead stayed dead. Ravens soared across skies scrubbed clean by dragon heat, and snow that fell melted quickly afterward as if winter's heart had been snuffed. Yet victory had price. Eastwatch's breach would take all spring to rebuild, Winterfell's crypt overflowed. Northern fields were salted with ash, water poisoned by rotting flesh. People spoke of spring, but famine crouched behind each dawn. Councils turned from war to seed and plow. Cleonet's Myrinese fleet arrived at White Harbor, 12 fat cogs laden with grain, dried dates, millet, and sacks of yellow saffron to trade for local oats. Their arrival prevented riot. Sansa granted the freed captains titles of honorary northerners, a precedent that scandalized some lords but stirred cheers among small folk. Gendry established a forge in Wintertown dedicated to working dragoglass into scythe teeth, arrowheads, and surgical lances. Maester Hammond studied them, convinced obsidian dust slowed infection. Regal nested atop Winterfell's Godwood Ridge, warming buds until the first green shoots peeked past blackened branches. Viserion roost on cliffs over Widow's Watch, scaring smugglers to honest trade. Drogon hunted whales beyond Skagos, sometimes vanishing for days, but always returning, eyes calmer than before. When the first crocus bloomed, Jon called a gathering in the Godwood. Snow still flecked the sacred pond, but the weirwood's new leaves fluttered crimson. Lords and ladies ringed the clearing, Glover, Reed, Manderley, the Vales Royce, Samwell Tarly with Old Town Charter in hand, Davos, Cleonet, Missandei, Grey Worm. Even Brienne of Tarth stood sentinel in blue steel, cloak heavy with travel dust. Jon addressed them. Winter's deepest bite is over. Yet South still bleeds. Cersei Lannister rules by fear. Aegon of Illyrio readies claim. War will come. We can stand aside and watch dragons melt kings, or we can shape tomorrow. He drew sword, planted it in thawing soil before the heart tree. I claim no throne out of vanity. But I will answer duty. The Iron Throne wrought misery, yet if we leave it for wolves it will grow fangs again. I propose a council of realms, North, River, Vale, Islands, Westerlands, Reach, Dorne, Storm, each with one vote, crown subdued to charter. Let the dragons guard borders, not masters. Let chains break for serfs as for slavers bay. A murmur spread, shock, awe, skepticism. Sansa stepped forward, placed hand on sword haft. The North stands with him. Cleonet addressed crowd in lilting accent. The freed of Essos will ship grain till your fields bloom if you teach lords to free their own small folk. Glover scowled but did not dissent. Sam drew scrolls. Old Town had arguments for charter. Royce suggested assembly at Harrenhal midsummer. Eyes turned to Yora. He stepped forward, bone amulet glinting at throat. I swore to guide the Queen's dream. This fulfills it better than any iron seat. You have my sword, my counsel, and my dragons if they will. Drogon landed beyond trees with rumble like thunder, shaking petals from branches. He lowered head, amber eye vast as shield. Jon walked to him, placed palm to warm scale. Smoke curled from nostrils but did not burn. The gods would held its breath. Under red leaves and white bark faces, pact was sealed. No throne, but counsel. No king, but guardian. When Jon withdrew his hand, the dragon huffed, then spread wings and threw himself skyward, scattering flakes of melting snow like confetti. Summer's first day dawned bright. 1,000 tents dotted the burned fields beyond Winterfell. Carpenters, masons, scribes, children chasing sheep newly turned to pasture. In the courtyard, Missandei leaned on the frost-pocked parapet, watching wagons rumble through gate bearing barrels of arbor wine, sacks of reach barley. She felt Yora's shadow before his voice. Ship sails at noon, he said softly. The Stormcrow, re-rigged and refitted. Cleanet sails her west to Sunspear with Jon's charter for Dornish lords to sign. He met her gaze. I thought to ride with her, but another task calls. Her brows arched. He unwrapped cloth parcel. Within lay the horn's final sliver, small, dull, inert, and a single dragon egg no larger than a war helmet, shell of mottled silver and pale green. It had been found in Drogon's new lair among cliffs of Skagos, nestled with 3 siblings. Yora touched its cool surface. Dragons lay for future they never see. This world will need tamers who choose song over chain, he said. A school to teach. I will found it on Dragonstone, forge where fire births knowledge, not fear. Missandei's fingers brushed eggshell. Then I sail with you. He smiled. I hoped you would. Below, Grey Worm drilled new recruits, wildlings and northerners alike, into phalanx squares, their shields painted with merged sigils, wolf's head overlaying broken chain. Cleanet supervised scribes transcribing charter copies, her voice crisp despite dawn's chill. Regal soared overhead, trailing laughter of summer wind. Viserion and Drogon followed, circling like guardians. Yora and Missandei descended the steps hand in hand. Bells tolled noon across Winterfell. The future waited, broad, treacherous, luminous. But in its forging they felt Daenerys' spirit at their backs, a warmth steadier than dragon flame. They boarded the caravel Dawn Child at dusk. As sails filled, Yora looked north one last time. Sunset bathed walls, distant silhouette in gold-rimmed rows, and for heartbeat he thought he saw a woman of silver hair standing upon its crest, smiling. Then cloud crossed sun and vision vanished, but warmth remained. He tightened arm around Missandei's waist. To Dragonstone, he murmured. To dawn, she answered. As the ship leaned south, dragons rode the dying light like living constellations, one black, one green, one pale gold. 3 omens against purple sky, soaring toward a horizon unscarred by war, toward a world still fragile as a hatchling's shell but alive with possibility. Their cries wove through gullscreech and surf thunder, a final echo of horn song now broken, yet resonant in every heart brave enough to listen. And far below, in cold depths chilled by bygone winter, a shard of weirwood spear drifted, its frost slowly thawing in warmer currents, its threat dissolved, like night itself, into memory.